kill it.
Okay.
So it's just
I
like,
didn't know
ah.
who was what.
So like, we don't
Right,
recommend,
well,
we
so I'm
recommend,
running.
if you wanna go UBC,
Probably.
we
We're in.
would,
Already reconvened in open session, and I know what I'm doing. It's time to go to taking positive steps of service awards.
Yeah, so I am going to turn this over to Mr. Jelnick from the high school.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan.
Yeah.
So on behalf of the other building administrators, our first award is going to go to a very special group of people, so I'm going to read something for you. If you had to choose, thank you guys. We'll wait till they enter. Some of them are here in person. Some are also online in our Google Meet. So if you had to choose one group of people that if they were absent for a day, the school would struggle to function normally, the daily procedures would teeter on falling apart, many of our students' needs would go unmet, and the staff would have many questions unanswered. So I'm sure you're thinking, oh yes, the building administrators. Not even close. I'm speaking of the very special group of people that we refer to as administrative assistants. They are the glue that binds the workings of our schools together. They are the ones that address the disgruntled phone calls, sympathize with the troubled student, and remind over and over again to our staff sometimes how our procedures work. They have always naturally been the person that staff and students go to vent their concerns, whether they be personal or professional, and they attend to all of these tasks with smiles on their faces. Behind a mask sometimes. We want to recognize not only everything that they have done during these unprecedented times, which have been countless tasks, like helping the buildings be safe for our students, sending and following up on daily COVID screeners, and being the ones to be sure our students are getting what they need on material pickup days. But everything that they do and have done on a daily basis to help make our Lodi schools a welcoming place for our families over the years. They, in many ways, are the face of our buildings, and because of their willingness to help, encourage, and guide anyone that walks through our front doors, they, more than many others, contribute to why the Lodi School District is such a wonderful place for our staff and students. So thank you for being such an integral part of the successes we have had in our schools yesterday, today, and in the future. So I want to recognize, first of all, our high school administrative assistants, and I see Kathy is online. Kathy, if you could wave. So Kathy Trinan, Dawn Schwartz, and Lynn Werderitz, who couldn't be with us. At the middle school, Pam Cunningham and Leslie Falk. At the elementary and OSC, Beth Lang and Jen Morgan. And at the primary school, Andrea Giese and Ronna Anderson, and also Jen Annan and EA, who helps in the office. So I'll let Mr. Breinig.
Here's your award.
Oh, thank
Comes with
you.
$100,000.
$100,000, yes! Oh, I'm gonna retire.
Look at Mr. Ricks.
You might want to share.
I would share.
Wait, you guys weren't smiling, let's do that again.
Always the comic.
Oh, well, the only thing that I'll say is that I thoroughly love my job. I wouldn't be here for over 17 years if I didn't. It's just a joy to work with the kids, the parents, the staff, and all that too. So I really appreciate this. This is amazing. It really means a lot. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I haven't been there as long as Beth, but I love my job too. It's great to work with a great team.
It's fun. It is. Yeah, teamwork is the way it goes. That's it.
And Brent
Kathy,
Richter.
we'd like to see you.
Oh, Brent.
Kathy, would you like to say anything?
Nice, Kathy.
Brent Richter is going to talk about some other very special people in this building.
Other special people.
I would like to take an opportunity to recognize the district office staff, administrative assistant staff, on behalf of the district office administrators. And those staff are, well, at least categorized as district office staff are Mo Palmer, who is here tonight, Chris Wendorf, Chris Lehman, Crystal Hoffman, we have a lot of Chris's, by the way, Chris Carls, Emma Newmeyer, and Heidi Endress. And they don't all work right here, but this is really the district office administrative assistant team. So this is what we wrote about our staff. We love our staff as much as the buildings love their staff too, just so that you know that, so that they know that. From the moment the district went to a remote work setting in March of 2020, the district office never missed a beat in continuing to keep the school district of Lodi moving forward. Many of those virtual days, the DO staff, we go by the DO staff, members reported to work on site if required, or worked remotely to continue completing their jobs, whether that be paying Lodi staff, paying vendors, setting up board meetings, meeting or caring for the needs of our students, parents, and community members, or even attending to the countless other responsibilities that they are charged with doing every day. There is no way to encompass the sheer amount of work that crosses each district office staff member's desk, and we are extremely fortunate to have this talented and caring staff in the district office. I want to show our appreciation by recommending them for the TOPS Award. So Mo, if you want to come up and accept on behalf.
There you go. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Grand. Nice certificate.
Is that a good file?
Mo's always thinking.
Mo, did you want to say anything?
Yeah.
On behalf of all the administrative assistants, thank you.
And Emma's online too.
That Emma's online. Thanks, Emma.
Crystal's online too.
You'll see her though.
All right, and we have one more TOPS award tonight to present. And our administrative team has nominated Vince Breinig for a TOPS award this month. Over the last 9 months, he's worked around the clock to provide leadership for the school district of Lodi. He's made so many tough decisions, and of course, every decision makes some people happy and some people mad. But through it all, he has always asked the question, what is best for our kids? He thinks about our students' safety, strives to provide all of our students a high-quality education. He often discusses our students' mental health and how to help and support families and all of their children. Often he's taking time away from his own family to focus on the needs of others, like leaving his daughter's basketball game to help with contact tracing, getting up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday to make sure he responds to everyone's emails in a timely manner. Getting up at 4 a.m. on inclement weather days to determine if the roads are safe enough to put our children on school buses. Reading books in his free time at home that he can share with our team to work toward always improving our organization and our ability to serve our students and our community to the best of our ability. The one thing that stands out to all of us is the effort Vince makes to say thank you to the entire staff, but especially to each of the members of our administrative team. He knows this year has been one of the most challenging on record for the field of education, and he continues to recognize others. So tonight we would like to recognize him for his dedication, perseverance, and love that he has for our school district and our entire community. Thank you, Vince. We truly appreciate you.
Well, as Tiffany would say, it's a group effort, right? Our whole administrative team has done phenomenal, our whole staff, the board. It's all been a great team effort all the way through and continues to be because everybody's focus has been the same way. What is best for our kids, what's best for our families, what's best for our communities. And as Tiffany mentioned, not everybody always agrees with that, but that is how we've made decisions in this room. And I appreciate all the extra time and effort all our administrators have put in, the board members have put in, and all of our staff have put in. It's been phenomenal. So, and then all the extra effort our families have had to put in, right? They've had a huge lift as well. So it's been a big partnership all the way through. So thank you for dinner. I appreciate it. It's always hard sitting here looking at these candy bars.
Okay. There are no presentations tonight in this part of the agenda, no public presentations, but we do have public input. The purpose of the citizen input agenda item is for the public to provide comments on any agenda item or to publicly address the Board of Education on items that pertain to school business. The amount of time allotted to each speaker is generally not exceed 5 minutes per person to allow all people who wish to speak an opportunity to be heard. However, the president may modify the time limits at his or her discretion. If the speaker has a question for the board, they'll be duly noted and responses will be provided in an appropriate manner. But the board cannot respond to individual questions or individual comments as part of the public input agenda item. As an additional reminder, the board cannot take action on any item that is brought forth during public input session or on any item that was not posted on the meeting agenda. Citizen input is an important part of the board meeting agenda, and the board appreciates hearing from the community on issues concerning them and our school district. Hello, so please state your full name so people can know who you are.
Yeah, Cody Endress. And before I talk to the board, I can only echo what Tiffany said about Vince. Congratulations. Talking to so many students, staff, families, everyone's just so impressed by your work, so thank you very much. To the Lodi School Board, I come here today with nothing but a thank you from myself, athletes, parents, and coaches throughout this community. A thank you for allowing wrestling, basketball, and hockey to compete in their winter sports seasons and for opening up other co-curricular activities at the high school and youth levels throughout our great district. Late last fall, you made the brave decision to allow athletics to occur at the high school level. At the time, we as coaches assured you that we would be able to have a safe and successful athletic season here in Lodi. I am proud to say that we accomplished just that, thanks to your willingness to be brave, to be bold, to listen, and to trust those who work tirelessly to ensure safety and success. Ask any of the coaches, athletes, parents, or admins involved in this athletic season, and they will tell you it wasn't easy. But nothing worth having or doing ever comes easy. The decision you made wasn't easy, but it was the right one, and I hope you know and understand how many people are thankful for the decision that you made to allow us to have our seasons. While I can't speak for the other programs, I'm pleased to share that for our team, we only had 4 cases of COVID throughout the duration of the season. While we would have loved to keep it at 0 cases, we are proud of the effort put forth by everybody on our team to ensure that cases remained low. 3 of those cases came from community spread during the peak COVID times, and only 1 case was determined to be a likely transmission within our program. There were so many people that said your decision was wrong and we couldn't have a safe and successful season here in Lodi, but we did, thanks to you. Without your bravery and your willingness to stand up for the needs of students in our district, the girls' basketball team wouldn't have been able to win a regional title. The boys' team wouldn't have been able to have such a successful regular season. The hockey team wouldn't have been allowed to compete and grow as a program. The wrestling team wouldn't have been able to win our 28th consecutive regional title, state tournament, or have our first state finalist since 2018. While all those individual statistics, team accomplishments, and program milestones are great, what's more important is that we as coaches were able to see, be with, teach, and love our student athletes. During the pandemic, it is easy to lose sight of how much some of our kids are truly struggling. If the students remained virtual and we didn't have co-curriculars, it would have been nearly impossible to identify those who truly needed the extra help, love, and care. While we as a program and all the other programs accomplished great things this year, the most important things we did was reach those kids who were struggling within our teams. For that kid whose grades were suffering, due to athletics, those grades suddenly meant a little bit more, and we were able to put a plan in place for them to get back on track. For the kid who really didn't have much physical activity during COVID, we were able to get them exercise, which in turn brought their confidence back. For the kid who was truly having dark thoughts, we were able to see it, address it, and help them move forward. Without a winter sports season, none of that may have been possible. Therefore, we just wanted to again say thank you for making the decision you did based on what is best for the students in our community. The positions you hold are nothing short of impossible, which is why we thank you for serving our school district. Best of luck in the rest of your decisions, and know we will always be thankful to each of you for allowing us to have a safe and successful winter sports season this school year. Thank you.
Hi, Steve. Please state your full name so that everybody can hear you.
Good evening, my name is Steve Colliard. Just sitting out there before I begin. Although I've spoken in front of this board multiple times and I have not necessarily agreed with everything that's been done here, I do recognize the work that you guys are doing. I want you to be aware that even though I don't, you're talking about people that agree and don't agree. I'm one of those that don't agree, and I will continue with that in a bit. But I do want to recognize that you are working hard, and it's a very difficult position, and it's one that not a lot of people are willing to take. So, on to that. Now I will comment about the presentation that I think you created for the reopening of school. I kind of jotted this out throughout the day. I apologize if it's a little choppy because I can't read my writing sometimes. I've read it a couple times over, but. So members of the school board, Mr. Bruinig, and the rest of the people in this room, I come before you this evening to once again speak about how vitally important it is to put our kids fully back in school. My opinion has never wavered on this subject. When back in August I heard while on vacation that the school was not going to be open to start the year, I was here the next month to strongly oppose the action that the board and district were taking. Now it's 6 months later, and here we are again, 6 months into the school year and just about a full year into this pandemic. Stated back then that the kids should be in school fully, and my feeling hasn't changed. Throughout this whole period, I continue to see personally with my 2 high school age children the challenges and sometimes damaging effects that can be done by not allowing them to be normal high school students. Of course, we are in some different situations, but I'll continue explaining my case. To see them saddened, to see them consistently disappointed for not being able to see their friends at school because their last name doesn't fall into the same part of the alphabet as theirs, to the ability to not have homecoming or proms. And now again, because although it's a wonderful thing that they're gonna be able to hopefully compete in the fall spring season, if that makes sense. Some kids are now being forced to choose between conflicts of sports, which back when we discussed the first time I was for having a fall sports season, as some other schools in the conference did as well. I hear from other parents, either directly or through my wife, who runs into many parents at the public library where she works, say how much the way school is being handled is affecting their kids as well as the other parts of their lives, especially their work. I hear of kids that won't go back to school because it's just very disruptive to them and they don't even want to bother. I also, one thing that very struck me was lunchtimes at the school during the in-person. It's quiet. I hear that I think Mr. Jelinek has had to create opportunities for kids to speak, which in a high school I can't imagine being a teacher and it being silent like that. It's just a very saddening thing that we are in a position where these kids aren't interacting normally in high school. It feels kind of like a loss of hope to me, hope that can be restored by opening school fully to, in my opinion, 5 days a week and as soon as possible, in my opinion, ASAP right now. I said on multiple occasions, I feel this board has made a mistake trying to keep everyone safe. And the reason why I say that is because the word safe is an undefinable word to me, because we are unable to keep everyone free of sickness, disease, and hardship in this imperfect world. But we can make tough decisions and be willing to work to make things right for our children. Back when I first spoke, I believed that this coronavirus was going to be like many viruses and follow a path. And if we look at the graphs that are available to us through the Department of Health, it shows that there was a rise. Even after mask mandates, it continued to rise into November, and now it is continuing to fall. As of just the other day when I was looking at it, we are down to very minimal cases being positive cases, which is very good. I spoke with a principal of my high school, my graduating high school, which is Lakeside Lutheran High School today. They have been in school since September, have had only one case of a shutdown, which was a 10-day shutdown due to not having bus drivers to drive the kids around. They have been successful in being open all year long. They also draw kids from at least 4 counties in the state, not just 2, which to me shows that we could have done this. We could have done what they've done. There's other schools. Now, there's a difference, it seems, in schools that are open or not. Schools that seem to be open are private schools. Schools that are not open oftentimes are more often public than not. I hope this is not an issue of a teachers union issue, which is being shown to be prominent in many large metropolitan schools. That would be very unfortunate to put our kids at disadvantage because of it. Gotten a little bit off topic here, but I am also with the vaccinations that are coming out, and I understand that I'm not sure every teacher is going to be getting vaccinated, but a majority of the teachers are going to be vaccinated, which is good. It adds confidence into people. However, I just heard last week our governor, Tony Evers, say that just because vaccinations are out there, teachers should still be able to go and we should still be able to open school without full vaccination. I understand the confidence in parents, confidence in teachers with that availability. However, I still feel the time frame that we have put forth to come back to school is still too far off into the future. Up until this pandemic hit last year, every teacher since the beginning of their career has taught 5 days a week, has had the ability to bring kids in full classrooms and to put off having school for another month. I think your recommendation, Mr. Brennig, is April 19th. I just feel that cutting even into fourth quarter doesn't give the kids an opportunity to have as much, I've been this the whole time, as much of a year that they can get. Every day goes by and it gets smaller and smaller. Sorry, I've lost my place. I see signs all around town that talk about Lodi pride. I want us as a town, as a city, as a school district to be proud to say that we have leaders that will do the right thing and that are open, and that right thing, in my opinion, is to open the schools now. Otherwise, we just need to make this available for them. I can't say it any other way. I come from a feeling of wanting to do the best for my children and others as well as you do. We just don't meet on what is the right decision. I really urge everyone to think again to give them as much as they can have. Please, as soon as we can, get these kids back in school so that they can have any bit of their high school career back. Because to have a life knowing your high school career was gone, it's some people's best times of their lives and they don't have it. And it just hurts. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you.
Next, we have the consent agenda items. Items in this section will be adopted as a group unless the board member requests a specific item to be removed from consent agenda and addressed separately. We have minutes from last month's meeting. We have vouchers, payroll checks, account payable checks, credit card payments, no fundraiser reports, no fundraiser requests, no field trip requests, and no committee recommendations for approval. Under other, we have a request for Wednesday night activities and Start College Now application and hockey co-op. Resignations and retirement, we have girls varsity head basketball coach, boys varsity head basketball coach, girls assistant basketball coach and assistant track coach. Under co-curriculars, we have football volunteers, 2 of them, and 1 assistant. Under middle school forensics, we have 3 advisors. And under high school assistant track coach, it says to table that, and then hiking club assistant. Nothing under crew. Under regular staff, we have a reading interventionalist, I cannot say that word. A long-term OSC advisor substitute. Personnel other, we have a leave without pay request, for 2 people.
I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the approval of Carrie Riley's retirement request and tabling the high school assistant track coach.
I'll second.
Motion by Stephen and a second by Shelley. Is there any further discussion? We're all here in person tonight, so we can just vote by voice vote. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. Next on the agenda, as our monthly thing, we have the school reopening plan discussion.
Yeah, so we will have a presentation that was posted on board docs. As Mr. Potter gets that up. So the question is why? You know, why are we here talking about school reopening and having a presentation about it, right? So we have had this, as Adam just spoke to, it's been the top agenda item at every board meeting since last July. And will continue to be there for the foreseeable future. We had families choose an instructional model for their students through the end of 3rd quarter, which ends here at the end of this month. March 26th is the end of our 3rd quarter, so it's a time for us to have this discussion. Science and data surrounding COVID in schools is continuing evolving. We've talked about that many times here. Every time we come back, we know, every meeting we have, we know something new or something's changed. And I foresee that continuing, because it's such a new thing. But one of the other reasons we're talking about this again tonight is we also have the lowest community spread that we've had since early September in Columbia County and Dane County, which is great. You know, something we can't take it for granted. We still need to continue to do the masking and all the other things that all the other mitigation we've had in place. But again, it's time for us to have that conversation. So today I'm going to go over the presentation I have here is going to kind of talk about the timeline that we've had since November, when we made the last decision to bring kids back to the blended model. Current models what those current models look like in our schools, the number of students, or percentage of students in each model, the advantages and disadvantages of our current model, options for possible next steps, advantages and disadvantages of those, challenges around CDC recommendations, especially with physical distancing if we bring more kids back, and then open it up for question and answer and some discussion before I make a recommendation where I think we should go next. Okay? So to start out, our commitments, and this has been our commitments throughout this pandemic. We talked about this, I remember last April, in May, like where are we going to focus these discussions around? And this is really what we've been focusing around, right? Student safety, right behind that are students, high quality instruction, and then operational effectiveness, making sure we're not doing long-term damage to our district as well. So these 3 kind of things have been our pillars that we've kind of planned around and continue to focus through. Timeline of events, again, I'm not going to go all the way back, but November 9th, at the Board of Education meeting, the board made a decision to give the option for students to come back in a blended learning environment for K through 12, starting January 21st, or January 19th, sorry, 2021. So we then, did surveys to our 4K primary school, elementary school, OSC, middle school, high school, and that took time, right? It takes time to figure out give parents options, right? We gave them the online option or a blended option. We needed to have time to figure out if we needed to move students, right? We need to figure out bus routes, because we don't know. It's not like you're stopping at every house you used to stop in. We set up our district by last names, so that's how we did our cohort model. So that made the busing piece really difficult. We had to reconfigure our rooms and do all those sorts of things, do planning for what would it look like for blended, what would it look like for online learning. So that took a lot of time for that instructional opportunity. We had families make that commitment, and then the district transition, January 19th. So the instructional models that aren't the same at every level. So the blended model of instruction at our 4K through 5 is 4 half-days a week in person. Students have at-home activities when out of schools for science, social studies, art, PE, and music. And they're cohorted with the class, meaning that is there with that group of kids the whole time they're in school. The virtual instructional models, we have parents who've chosen that option for their children. Those students have a dedicated virtual school teacher. And then obviously the specials classes are virtual art, PE, and music as well. The middle school is a little bit different. We had 2 full half-days per week. Monday, you're in a cohort Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday. And then you had at-home activities the days you weren't in school. And they were cohorted in their academic classes. So, for example, they were in science together, social studies, language arts. They would be together. But once you got to the specials classes, we give choice at the middle school. So not every student has to play the trumpet, right? So if you choose to play the trumpet, you're going to be taking band. But other kids don't choose to do that. So we have to have some of that mixing. So there was more mixing that happened. Virtual model at the middle school, teachers had a dedicated virtual class. So example, science, a 6th grade science, a teacher would teach in person. The next section would be just a virtual section. Then she would be meeting with her virtual students. So we still had dedicated core time that was just virtual. But then students had asynchronous special classes. So that means that they were put out there and students could do them. There wasn't a schedule that they had to fit in, but they had to get them done in a certain amount of time. So the key here is that middle school through, or primary school through middle school, you had a dedicated online teacher for the kids who were online. The high school, that changed. So the blended instructional model, again, very similar to middle school, 2 days a week. Kids would log into their scheduled classes when they weren't in school. So if they, for example, my son was on a Monday, Thursday, so on Monday he would go to his classes. Tuesday he would log into those same classes virtually. If he had a friend who chose to be online, that person would log in to those classes all the time. So there wasn't a dedicated teacher for online instruction, and it's really difficult to do that at the high school because of certification issues, right? And making sure, for example, if you have a chemistry class, you can't just have anybody teach chemistry. Somebody has to be certified in chemistry to teach that class. So, and again, stop me anytime you want. This is just background information. I know the board knows most of this.
Right, but you're also recording it and putting it out there for the public too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So, students who chose the online model. So if I'll go through here, the primary school, 20% of our 4Kers, 26% of our kindergartners, 23% of our first graders, 31% of our second graders chose the online model. In elementary, you'll see the same thing. It went up a little bit in grades 3 and 4. 5th grade, it dipped a little bit. OSC was significantly higher. Students choosing the online model. Middle school, again, at 30%, 35%. 8th grade, it dipped a little bit.
Is there a reason for that? That was one of my questions with the 8th grade especially.
So, I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
nothing that I could put my finger on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered.
The preference of the kids and families.
Okay, thank you.
And then high school, that freshman class, you saw right about 40%, and then it really shot up. Online, 64%, 70%, and then senior 58%. And some of that, I think, has to do with Mr. Collier just talked about, right? My friends aren't there at the same time I am, so I'm going to stay online. But there are other issues, right? As senior, I know my senior son rolled out of bed at a couple minutes before school started, before he had his calculus class first semester, and was successful. But, so there's some freedom that came with that as well for our students. And some were very successful. So it just changed. But there's significant differences between that 9th grade and 12th grade. So if we move back or continue on the same path that we are, if we stay with the same model, and one of the questions is going to be for high school when we survey them or have someone make a commitment is, if we have a low number like this, if you're doing blended, you can come in for all 4 days. right? Because one of the things right now, we could probably support kids in all 4 days, because right now there's some classes, grade 11 or grade 10, that have 2 or 3 kids in, 1 kid in person, right? And everybody else is online. So that would be something we would have to work in if we stay in a blended model at the 6-12 level into that, those commitments, like, all right, you want online or blended? If you do blended and our numbers are low enough, we will allow you to come in 4 days a week. If our numbers aren't low enough, then we wouldn't. But that's just something we would have to look at, something that we would do differently, right? If we would have done that in January, parents would have been upset, saying, now, wait a minute, you didn't ask me if I could come in 4 days a week. You asked me 2 days a week, right? So we didn't feel we could make that change. So that's kind of just a vast overview of where we are with students who are online and in person with our blended models. So now we have some advantages and disadvantages to our current model. And again, I'm not going to go over all of them. I have some of the highlights here, but it just touches on a few of them. So advantages, parents have a choice, right? They have a choice to send their kids to school or to do online. Students are able to come into school for instruction, which has been huge. We are providing in-person instruction and interventions in this model. And some students are really thriving in that blended model or in the online model. It is the safest model this time for students, staff, and families. There's been minimal transmission of COVID at school. We've not had to close a grade level or building since we made this transition. And we are able to follow the CDC and DHS mitigation strategies pretty much everywhere except on buses where we have kids 1 to a seat, so they're not 6 feet apart. And just to kind of talk about those mitigation strategies going back, we were able to follow them. So the CDC published a brand new document. We're kind of really waiting for it in February, this new school reopening document that came out on February 12th. Got it, spent the weekend reading it, and it really didn't provide us a whole lot of new information. We talked about the stuff we've already been doing, right? The 5 key mitigation strategies: universal and correct use of masks, physical distancing of 6 feet, maximized to the greatest extent possible, hand washing and respiratory etiquette, cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities, and contact tracing in combination with isolation and quarantine when people have been in close contact with someone with COVID. All things we've been doing. So the challenges to our current system is not all of our students are engaging in times opposite of their in-person learning. So they may come in on Monday, well, Tuesday they're supposed to do online learning or learning at home. Sometimes they're not engaging. They're just not doing it, which causes a lot of stress for our staff, because then on Thursday they're trying to catch those kids up and then work with the kids who have done their work at home. So that's really difficult. Or again, if it's at primary elementary school, morning, afternoon, same issue. Difficulty of teaching in person and virtual students at the same time, right? At the high school level, it's really difficult. You're teaching with a screen, you're teaching with people in front of you. It's difficult to do things effectively that way. Students are not getting the same instructional times as they would in past years, and we've heard that from several parents and students. Difficult to provide interventions and support if we're not there consistently. And it's really hard to even think, like, how do you bring a student in for if a student's really struggling, can you bring them in, for example, if they're at the middle school, can you now bring them in for 4 days? Well, you're gonna have them, a lot of times those teachers are repeating that same lesson, in-person lesson the next day, so are you gonna bring them in that same lesson? Well, that's not gonna engage a student anymore, like they have to sit through the same thing all over again. So that's a struggle. It's a hardship on families, right? And there is no 2 ways about it. It's really hard on our families to have to do childcare and schedule a half-day schedule or every other day schedule. And again, we just have some students who are really struggling to engage in this model. So we've got to the point where we need to make a next step. As I started off this presentation talking about, it's a natural time for us to make a step, because we have the quarter ending, we have spring break coming, the numbers have gone down significantly, and there's been positive news about vaccines. All great things that kind of lead us to this next step of where we need to go. Again, so reasons to stay in our current model, or reasons the board may consider staying in our current model. Again, not all the reasons, but parents have choice. Most of our students are being successful. Students, families, staff have a scheduled routine, and any changes to that would be disruptive. This would be, if we make a change, it would be the third major change of this school year, right? It's starting school all over again for the third time. And it's really difficult, right? Getting kids back into that routine and parents in a routine and all of us in that routine. It's a heavy lift. It's like a month before everybody kind of, oh, this is how we do stuff again. And we'd be upsetting that apple cart again. Right now, we're able to follow the CDC and DHS mitigation strategies in school. Vaccinations are just around the corner, right? So our school district, any teacher or educator, bus driver who wants a vaccine will have the opportunity to get a first dose tomorrow at a vaccine clinic. Right? So when I started putting this together, we didn't know that. But that is an unbelievable opportunity for our staff, meaning that second dose will happen April 6th. So we have a virtual day tomorrow for our students, so our staff are freed up to get that vaccine. So again, that's a huge step. Right now it's working. There's very disruption due to COVID. If we bring more students back, we will have more disruptions due to COVID because anytime we will not be able to social distance, so anytime we have a positive case, it's going to take more kids out on a quarantine isolation. Changes may, if we change now, we maybe end up reshuffling classes again, especially at the lower levels. That becomes an issue. Kids changing teachers, and obviously that there's a huge piece of that relationship with the teacher-student and how successful students are in class. And right now, we've had some special teachers have flexibility during the school day. They've helped us cover some times when we haven't had subs and allowed us to stay open. We would lose that flexibility if we change models. Reasons to switch. It would increase students' time in school and contact with staff, no doubt about it. We allow our staff to provide supports interventions in person, allow family caregivers a chance to go back to a more normal schedule. We can still implement all CDC mitigation strategies except physical distancing. We can't guarantee physical distancing, and we've never guaranteed it, but we can't, there's time we just know it wouldn't happen. For the most part, it wouldn't happen. I shouldn't say there's times, it won't happen. Community transmission is the lowest since September 3rd in both Dane and Columbia County when you look at cases per 100,000 people per week. As I said, staff's being vaccinated, so the week by April 20th, if we have a positive person who is in contact with one of our staff members who's been vaccinated, the staff member does not have to be quarantined at that point, which is a huge piece for us. Warmer weather allows us to go outside with students more, drop windows on buses more, and other districts have shown that you can have been successful in person. So if a switch is made, one of the pieces that I've heard Mr. Collier make tonight, and I've heard from other people too, is that it's, school is not the same, right? Lunches aren't the same, and it still will not be the same. If we bring our students back, it's not like, well, pandemic's over. We will still put in all those mitigation factors that we have, right? We're gonna continue with masking. We are gonna continue with hand washing. We're gonna continue with cleaning, contact tracing. And we will do the best we can with physical distancing. We just will not be able to do 6 feet. Lunches, specials, recess will not be the same, right? We will have lunches spread out. Recesses, you'll be in quadrants of a playground, right? And you will be just with your class. Students who have COVID-like symptoms will not be allowed to come to school. Students will not be able to physically distance in buses. Quarantine and isolation numbers will increase. But questions that we need to answer if we do consider a change, will the board continue to offer an online option? So one of the things I hear, again, speaking to one of our speakers tonight, is we need to make this change now. The only way you can do that is by not offering an online option, right? That online option, we need to have time to plan. And when we talk about having a 4 or 5 day week, that's when you start talking about those issues, because you want to make sure the students online and students in person are going at the same pace, right? That we are following the same curriculum, same lesson plans, working together to make sure that our kids in online are not, well, after the end of this year, we all know these are the kids who are online because they're doing so much better, or vice versa, right? We want to make sure it's a quality education experience, whichever model we have. So that takes a lot of planning and time. If we do an online option, it may change what it looks like right now, depending on the number of people who choose that option. So, for example, right now we have classes, a third grade class that you can do, we have enough kids that we just have a set-aside online class. If only 2 kids choose to go online, we can't do that, right? We don't have the staff to pull that off. Well, then we have to look at other options. Do we do a concurrent option like they do at the high school? Or what other options do we have? So we would have to look at that. So as we, again, do surveys or have asked staff or parents to commit that, if that changes based on those numbers, we would have to reach back out to that group and let them know that. The question is the board or district comfortable not following the physical distance guidelines in the classroom and on buses? Again, right now we have 1 student per seat on a bus. If we bring students back more, we're not gonna be able to do that. And then when will this change take place, right? Is it gonna take place now, right after spring break, a couple weeks after spring break? And then do we look at 4 days a week or 5 days a week for students? So those are really the questions that need to be answered. And then I lay out some options for the board. You know, we can keep doing what we're doing. It's being successful, and it's working very well. We're in this pattern. We can keep moving forward. We could bring students back in person on April 5th, 4 days a week. We could bring students back in person April 19th, 4 days a week. We could look at all these other options. You could bring back, you could start bringing 4K to 5 back on either of those days, and then bring 6-12 days blended the rest of the year. You do 4K 5, and then 6-12 2 weeks later, bring them in, so there's a little staggered. You could look at 4K 8 as a group, 9-12, 4K 6 and 9, because that's 6 and 9ers when people change those buildings, so our freshmen and our 6th graders have never been to the middle school, high school, so those populations you really worry about. Any other options like that, you can look at 5 days a week as well. So option 1, keeping the current instructional model. Pros, we've been over most of this stuff already, and cons. So I've kind of gone through all that information through this presentation. Option 2 is bringing back students in person April 5th. It's a natural break in the school year with spring break and the start of our 4th quarter. It's 2 more weeks of in-person instruction than if you start on April 19th. There is some concern about people traveling, students, families, and staff over spring break. Every time we've had a natural break like that, Christmas, Thanksgiving, those type of things, the case numbers have gone up in the area. Difficult for us to have bus routes and classes reshuffled in time to communicate that to families, because as I said, we will have to ask our families who's coming in, reshuffle some classes, really work with our bus company, and put together routes, and that takes time, and we want to make sure, and it freaks all of us out when it happens the day before, right? You find out the day before, one time my child's getting picked up for a bus route, that's not very comforting, right? We want to make sure we have that all planned out and we can kind of run some scenarios through that. And our staff will not be fully vaccinated by April 5th. If we come back April 5th, again, as I started putting this together, I didn't know that April 6th will be a virtual day. So if we brought them back April 5th in person, the following day would go back to virtual day and then bring them back. Option 3, really it's just flipping those things, right? So pros, it's 2 weeks after spring break to account for those who travel, extra 2 weeks to develop class lists, bus routes, communicate with families, and staff. Any staff member who wants to be vaccinated will be vaccinated by that time. Cons, it's not a natural break, it's 2 weeks into the 4th quarter. So we would continue, if you want that model, people who would stay with the current model they are in until the 19th. The other options I threw out there as well, not that you don't have enough of them to think about, but why 4 days a week? Again, staff need time to plan to ensure that continuity between online and person. They also need time to plan and making meeting time after making this 3rd significant change in instruction. And that impacts how lessons are planned and how you're moving forward. And we need additional time for contract tracing. There has been several times this year that having that Wednesday off has saved us from having kids out on quarantine, right? So some has symptoms on a Thursday, and they've been out for a couple days. But it gives us some time in there to help catch up on contact tracing, because that's gonna be another issue. We may need to hire another contact tracer because we have so many more students in school, and there'll be more contacts anytime we have a positive case. Cons, it's one less day of in-person instruction, and again, it continues to have there's a piece of hardship there for families, like, I still don't have daycare on Wednesday, I gotta pay for daycare on Wednesdays. And then 5 days a week, it just kinda, again, flips them. It's more instruction, easier on families, gets us back to more normalized schedules. But then again, the planning piece and the major instructional shift. So again, just wanted to lay out where we've been kind of over the last quarter, and then just some options that the board can consider moving forward. So I will take any questions, and I know all the other administrators are here to answer any questions you may have as well. And then I will, when you're ready, I will give you my recommendation of what the next step should be.
So as you said, April 5th, April 6th is the next day, is the virtual day because the teachers.
It would be.
And then April 7th is a Wednesday, and so that's, April 5th is really April 8th. In theory, if we went with April 5th.
And the CDC's, like, or the understanding with the vaccinations is that 2 weeks after that second dose, you're considered to have that full effect and full immunity from the vaccine.
Yeah, so it would be April 20th, the day after.
So April 19th is essentially
Yep, the last.
all, everyone who's receiving vaccines in this particular time frame
Yep.
are basically good to go.
I want to say something about social distancing. I subbed at Partyville the first week of their school because their teacher was out with cancer, and I subbed there many times. Sorry. The kids would sit in their areas. We had them all spaced out in the room. And then the first day, they got up to go when the bell rang, and they all walked out and clomped and all tucked in together as they walked out the door. And I was like, oh my gosh. So after that, I knew to do, row 1, row 2, row 3. But you can only do so much for social distancing, because we know kids are not necessarily social distancing anyway, in some ways. I mean, we have to give the facts, but I'm just saying, when I saw that crossed out, I was like, you can give it the best shot, I guess, so.
But there is a significant difference between kids sitting together for a 45-minute class, not socially distanced, and then walking down a hallway and not being together for, a short amount of time before you go to your next class.
Yeah.
So there is a difference there, because, we still have that issue right now, right?
Right.
We all struggle with social distance, whether it's our 4Kers, our sixth graders, our seniors in high school, our staff, or any other community members. We all struggle. We're all social people, so we all struggle with that social distancing. And the key is that 6 feet for 15 minutes, right? So trying not to be there and trying to remember to separate that out. One thing I didn't talk a whole lot about is, there are some places that are recommending, like, especially K-5, that there's some places that are recommending 3-foot social distancing. I know I've shared some information with the board on Brown University studied that, American Pediatric Society, World Health Organization, their recommendation is that. The CDC is 6 foot. Dane County is 6 foot. It used to be to the greatest extent possible. They have now changed it to the 6 feet when possible. And in talking to Dane County, they've done that to help create flexibility for schools, right? And unless you read them next to each other, you read right over that and think that says the same thing, but it doesn't mean the same thing. So they're trying to create some of that flexibility, but there is definitely more scientific evidence for K-5 versus 6-12, because K-5, it's easier to keep them in cohorts. 6-12, as I've mentioned, kids are they're gonna shuffle, right? It's hard to keep them in a cohort because they're changing classes. So they're not as static of a group. So when you're not 6 foot social distancing, you're supposed to try to come up with other ways, like keep a static group. Pod kids, these 4 kids sit together, they have lunch together, they have recess together, those type of things. You can do that a little easier at the elementary and primary school level than you can at the high school and middle school level.
I think it'd be interesting, you can't ask this question, but how many of our high school kids have already had COVID? Right? It's a chunk, and so, yeah.
I mean, well, we're talking a lot about, like, at the high school, it's not possible, and everybody's back to distance, but we honestly do not know how many, if we just said, well, okay, we're going back 4 or 5 days a week, how many of those kids are doing well in the online and would prefer to stay there? I mean, that's an unknown, so in certain circumstances, certain classrooms, we may be fine with distancing, and I like, are you talking about using the larger spaces? And because we're doing that right now, right?
Yeah.
Where we need to spread people out, to go to the LMC or the LGI or things like that.
Yeah, so that would be part of the huge, of figuring out, as you said, surveying parents once they know, making them make a commitment, because then, yeah, there might be some classes there's a couple classes we need to move to the LGI, the library, a gym space, or, depending on the class sizes, or depending on some smaller rooms, like we have some smaller rooms that, there could be a smaller class size, but we need to move it out of there, right?
Yeah.
So we would have to look at that as a possibility. But again, if everybody came back, those possibilities slowly go away pretty quickly. So we have to be ready for both of those scenarios. I don't see everybody coming back, right? I see a lot more kids coming back, I would think, but it's hard to tell, right? A high school, it's depends on what your friends are doing, some of it, and again, our kids have been pretty successful, so it could be a wave one way or the other.
So it seems like based on all of that, that the middle school is probably our biggest challenge for social distancing, just because you can't even, one thing I was thinking is that if we still get, if the numbers stay the same, which there's a very distinct possibility that they will, it's probably
In the middle
better
school.
that.
In the middle school.
In the middle school. I think in the high school too, or stay close to it, but I think those two are gonna be at the same. Would we have enough room to maybe move a grade from the middle school to the high school? Because the high school building's got a lot of, but that doesn't really buy us anything because the rooms are still the same room size. So it's not like you can split a class over two, you'd have to have 2 teachers, so it just seems to me that as we're talking about this, that middle school is the biggest challenge for, really for both social distancing and cohorting, really, because of the specials and all of that. And
Sorry.
I was just, the final thing is like you said, 1 through 5, K through 5, there's a lot of leeway there. Middle school, they start to become that adolescent age where we don't really know a lot about how COVID affects them. And then you've got the middle school, or the high school, where it's basically the same as adults, pretty much, but, so anyway, that's all.
I'm not trying to negate social distancing at all. I would think if you look at the districts the schools that are open, that have been open since the beginning of September, and I work in one of those districts, we're trying to social distance, but I can tell you it doesn't happen. We don't have the space. The kids are not 6 feet apart all day, and we're not seeing the spread. I just don't think it's happening. And I think, too, you can, again, you're looking at a small group, but look at the sports that we've done. Like, you can't get much closer than wrestling. Basketball, they're not 6 feet apart during the whole thing, and we're just not seeing it, I don't think. So I'm not saying we totally get rid of social distancing. I'm just saying, you think with proper mitigation when you're doing the cleaning, because I think that's making the big difference in the buildings that are staying open. When you're cleaning in between those classes, everybody's hand sanitizing, masks are being used, I think the social distancing can go a little bit farther down on the list.
Well, and as Vince said, like, it's the World Health Organization and other organizations, the 6 foot that's the CDC's recommendation, as possible, but it's not, going to say 3 feet, 6 feet when possible. It's not out there. It's not like we're going out on a limb to say that is a reasonable policy for us to have, I believe. Especially when, when we make it clear as much as we can to families what it would look like. And so that they can still make a choice. I strongly believe we need to offer an online option so that, a family can say, I still don't feel comfortable. So, you still have that option.
Just from the medical standpoint, some kids can't come back. There's no vaccine for kids, and there's some family members with comorbidities that they can't come back or have infection. So we have to do something.
Yeah, that's where I think, I think if we were saying we're coming back and we can do all the CDC guidance, then we might be able to get away without an online version. Maybe,
No,
I'm just saying.
There's some
But since-
families that can't.
And that was my whole point about this, is that, you know, and it's important for families to hear it, that we all believe the science and understand that we can probably reduce those things. But there are still families out there that have people that are in high-risk areas that they can't avoid any exposure, which means no matter what we do, we have to do an online version, which is one of the decisions, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
So reshuffling, sorry to put you on point and Mike, you on point, but kids at the lower grades have already reshuffled, some of the kids at the lower grades have already reshuffled teachers twice. If we do come back at those lower grades and there aren't enough online components, those kids are gonna some of those kids are gonna reshuffle again a third time, correct?
Potentially, I mean, I think it depends on how many families want that, and we would want to obviously eliminate, I mean, try to keep kids with a teacher that they have had in one of those two places. One of the things that has happened as the teachers have been sharing and like coordinating on their planning is that kids have had lots of teachers. So I mean, that is a positive, is they've built relationships with a lot of different teachers, but I think we would try to do whatever we could to keep them or return them to a teacher that they had previously had. It just is gonna depend on how many online, so that it is like, you know, Mr. Brennigan said, probably one of the challenges that we have is trying to figure out classes.
And then that con versus the pro of actually having kids in front of you and right there. And,
Well, plus it's been proven, I shouldn't say proven, it's been acknowledged that the kids are not really the carriers, not all, but I just think we have enough proof after all this looking that we have done for all these meetings that we have, that the kids are not necessarily the carriers, and so it makes sense to get them back in.
Well, one of the things that, just to kind of add on that point, the mind shift has kind of been, if you look at schools and the research around schools, is it's not whether or not people get infected, right? It's more, people are gonna get infected and bring it into school, but where is there a spot where there's guidance and rules to stop outbreaks? Schools are a perfect place for that, right? They have rules, guidance, and following through. The other piece, to kind of go back to Barb's point, is number one mitigation is source control, right? Because this is where it's coming from your mask. It's coming from your breath, your air droplets and things like that. Having a mask is the biggest piece that we have. And, you know, that even if it's on the table here, the odds of me getting it to my face, into my mouth, not that our elementary, primary school kids can't get their hands underneath their masks, they do, right? Middle school, high school kids do. But it's a huge piece, that source control is a huge piece of whatever we're doing, that's our number one. And, you know, we have seen schools that have had really high transmission studies, like Wood County's study where they had really high transmission, and the same kind of transmission rates we had for a while, where you had over 1,000 people, 1,200 people per 100,000 being infected, and the school transmission rate was low. Not that people didn't bring it in, but there was very little transmission at school because of mask wearing. They had issues with social distancing and those things, especially in the lower levels.
And then at the high school, some weird thing happens and most kids come back. And you only have a few virtual to literally pay attention to those couple virtuals while you have a whole room full. That seems like a nightmare for teachers.
Well, there would definitely have to be a shift in instruction.
Right.
So right now, most of the instruction is happening right here
Right.
on the screen, because most of them are at home.
Yeah, it's easier to work with most here and a
Right.
few here, right?
And there is, and I've been in a lot of classrooms since we started blended, and obviously there is some instruction out here too. We're working with kids in the classroom and, that are physically there. But if for instance, now we have 15 kids in front of us, and I've got 3 kids at home, there's gonna have to be a shift. And we talked to our teachers about this already, and our PLCs recently, and they totally understand that. Like, there has to be a change.
Right. And so
They're doing the best they absolutely can, considering the situation.
Right.
But they wouldn't want it any other way. They'd have to instruct in a different way, for sure.
Okay. They're up for the challenge, is what you're saying.
They've been challenged a lot this year, they're up for another one.
Yeah.
So I have a question, if it would be possible to bring back 4K through 5th grade, 5 days a week, and 6 through 12, 4 days a week with the Wednesday off, would that create a busing nightmare, or how would logistics work if,
Yeah.
if
So
we
it,
split it that way?
yeah, it shouldn't be a busing nightmare, because we will continue to have, right now we run 4K5 routes and 612 routes. That will continue for the remainder of this school year, at least that's the plan. Because we don't want to be mixing kids from the elementary to the middle school, high school level. The issue will come back down to our kids who take the online option, right? So now you're losing that planning time between all those teachers, and having that, making sure that everybody's on the same page and finding time for our specials teachers to put together information or classes for our online kids and things like that. So that's where that becomes a difficult issue. Can we make that work? Again, our staff has been phenomenal at making anything work, but I think that will be difficult. I think they would, it's gonna be this is a big switch again, right? So it's gonna take a heavy lift, because it's not like we're just canceling school for 2 weeks, planning to start school, right? We're still teaching and trying to plan for a switch, and that is a really heavy lift for our staff, right? At the beginning of the school year, we have time to get ready. We have 3 days of in-service, some in your classroom, some not. And then we have kids come, and it's pretty much, you get into that routine of how that's done. You're not teaching kids while you're trying to get ready for new kids to show up in your classroom. And that's what happens. That's what's gonna happen right now, right? They're gonna be teaching, and still planning on our Wednesdays for blended learning and online learning, while still planning also now to flip a switch whenever that may happen.
Mr. Brady, can I interject for one thing too?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Please,
absolutely.
go for it.
I've never been live in one of the other pieces is the support staff. Right now, if we were to do 5 days a week, I only have 2 people that are there full-time on that. And one of the things that we would have, if this goes forward, is the staggered lunch and recess, so that you would have one person that would take the students to lunch, they'd take them to hand wash, and then they would take them to recess. So it would take additional staff those Wednesdays as well, because the educational assistants that we typically have, they might be working 5 days a week and they would have shorter times. We've rearranged it to try to help support the coverage of regular ed and special ed for that. So that would just be another piece too, just financial costs.
Okay. And to add to that, it's not that we wouldn't hire more additional staff to pull that off, but we have been short-staffed throughout the year. We've had postings all year long. So anybody who's listening, who wants to work at primary school as an educational assistant, applications we are now taking.
Yep.
So those are things that are just the logistics of trying to do this. It takes people, right? And we struggle to find, I know that was one of the things that happened early in August. Like, if people don't want to teach, tell them, tell them to get a different job. But you don't have people to replace them with. Same with educational assistants, right? We need our teachers, and we value our teachers and all the hard work. And people, when they said that, were very frustrated, but because people really love our teachers and our support staff and the work they do, and they need to be commended for all the work they do. But that will be an issue. We will not have the staffing we need to probably pull that off.
If we did do 5 days at the lower grades, there would be no deep cleaning on Wednesday either.
Well, and we don't do a ton of deep cleaning on Wednesdays right now. I mean, so we would do a little bit more if there was, if we had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. But right now, like when we first started talking about deep cleaning, we were talking about that in August and September. Like, when we come back in blended, we're gonna have a Monday, Tuesday group and a Thursday, Friday group, and we're gonna deep clean in between them. Well, as we worked with our staff and talked about instruction, that just wasn't the best instructionally. So now we got a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday. Well, then there's no need to deep clean between, because both groups are coming in. And same with the elementary and primary, we have the half day, so the deep clean kind of happens in between instead of that Wednesday. Plus, it's not that we still need to clean. It's really important, but it's not, this is not the primary mode of transmission either. Right, again, it's the mask and things like that. So there's not that deep cleaning that happens between Wednesdays like we had planned and how we started doing it. But once we changed our cohort model, that didn't make sense. We just, we clean really well at night, clean in between. And then if we have a COVID positive case, we go in and do a deep clean of that space, whatever that may be.
Okay.
I think the other really strong mitigation strategy that's been really necessary is that symptom
Oh, yeah.
check, like, not just the check-in, but everybody being aware of when you see this kid and you're like, oh, I've heard them cough twice and their nose is running, like, they're out, like, until they get a COVID test or they're out for 10 days. Like, there's just no give on that policy. And parents understand it, I think, too. And I mean, I think that in itself has headed off a lot of cases for us in the buildings.
Yeah, we are one of the only districts in the area that does a screening device,
Yeah.
right? Most districts aren't doing that. We have been from day one, and we will continue to do that for the rest of the year. It's just a good reminder for our parents to just pause, right? And remember, and you're responsible not just for your child, but then for every other child in that classroom. So it's really important.
Can we get your recommendation?
Sure.
Go
ahead.
Yeah.
So we're not quite in the same spot from a staffing perspective as primary, but many of our EAs, because we're also going a little bit longer in our shifts, 15 minutes on each side, and because of the way that we've done crossing guards, and so we staff some of the crossing guards, so many of our EAs are out of time on Wednesday or have very little. So again, it's not that it's impossible to be addressed, but there would definitely be challenges that would need to be worked through on Wednesday. Sorry, didn't mean to.
No, we need to hear from you, yeah.
I think it's
Did we
really,
invite you?
I think it's really, really
I'm
good.
gonna go.
I think it's really, really good to talk through all of this.
Yeah.
But I think we as board members, as much information as we have and are given, we're not in the classroom, we're not in the schools. So I think we need to, that Vince, you need to, with your team, tell us what you think is gonna work best. Because we can't make everybody happy, but what is gonna work best for what we've got going now?
So, I don't know, Tyler, you want to pull that presentation back up? So my recommendation is that the school district of Lodi offer students 4K through 12 the opportunity to return to school for in-person instruction 4 days a week, starting April 19th, while still allowing families to choose an online option for the remainder of the school year. Again, we've talked about some of those reasons, right? We have, the reason for April 19th is we have people, students, families, and staff who are traveling over spring break. Makes us a little nervous, right, with people going all over the place, that might cause a surge. Staff, by April 19th, April 20th will be fully vaccinated. It'll be 2 weeks after their vaccinations. I think our numbers are as low as they've been since September 3rd of last year. And I just think now is it's a natural time, right? The fourth quarter, it's getting warmer, and allow us to do this. We'll be able to provide all the, again, physical, we talked about that. We will not be able to physically distance, but we have all the other mitigation factors in place. Other schools have shown us that they can be successful in doing this. And I think it's time we take that next step.
Mo, do you know the last day of school, or do you know the last day of school? Is it the 2nd, or is it the 9th, or 7th, or?
Oh, last day of school for the semester, for
For
the
the
year?
year,
June 4th? No, wait, sorry, June 3rd?
June 3rd, okay. So about 7 weeks. If we come back on the 19th, it'll be about 7.
Yeah, about 7 weeks.
Okay.
Be 7 weeks back.
I will make a motion that we adopt the district administrator's recommendation. Do I need to read the whole thing for you?
I got it already.
Okay.
I will second Stephen's motion.
Motion by Stephen and a second by Angie. Do you have any further discussion on the topic? Now's the time to have it.
Okay, let's live it up. I've been taking notes, some of the notes I had for days already. So I'll throw some ideas out to you. I was interested in having online be available. I was interested in starting April 7th. And all grades. And one of the reasons I was doing all grades, I know we there was a little bit of talk about potentially splitting the schools. We're bringing back athletics. There's gonna be no cohorting athletics. So, and let's face it, if the kids are online, then they're gonna come back for athletics. That kind of doesn't make sense, but we would still have to allow it. I understand we'd be taking on a little more risk. And everybody in this room loves risk and change, just loves it. But it's really time we try this. We've been conservative and we've been successful in every step we've taken. But, you know, now I think we need to be a little more aggressive. The April 7th would give them basically 2 months in school. And it's still, what is today, the 12th? It's still only a wink less than 30 days from now. But it's 30 more days before we would switch.
But then they'd go right into spring break.
After.
Do you think, though, if you don't give the 2-week break after spring break, you have a significant chance of more cases in your buildings? If people go away on spring break and don't take precautions and get COVID, they're gonna be bringing it into your buildings probably before they become symptomatic.
I'm kind of counting on the reduction
In the community.
in cases. And I'm counting highly on the first shot, since our teachers are gonna be getting 2 shots. I'm weighing heavily that the first shot is gonna be the biggest impact for the teachers to ward off any infection.
So the way the shot works is the first shot does not ward off infection. It will prevent you from going into the hospital in most cases. It'll prevent you from getting a severe case in most cases, but it won't get you preventing getting COVID. You'll have a milder case of COVID in general.
I understand, and I agree with what you just said, but our greatest fear has been somebody gets really sick.
Right, and the first shot takes care of that.
In one manner of speaking, we can almost equate 1 shot of COVID in a 2-shot system to getting the flu, which is what we normally deal with. And I don't know if any of you are gonna be disappointed because we missed out on the flu this year. That was as close as I've got to a joke.
And that could also cause us a staffing problem, which we've talked about all along.
I understand, but I am asking for us to take the risk. I understand the risks, I've been thinking about them. I've been kind of worthless the last couple of days, looking forward to coming to this meeting to make this decision.
So the 7th is a Wednesday, so you're proposing.
It'd be the 8th.
It was, what?
It'd be the
It'd have to
8th,
be the
Thursday the
8th,
8th. If we're doing 4 days a
I'm
week.
going after the virtual day of the second round of shots.
Yeah, because we do not want to start the 7th, right? The second round of shots, it's just too unpredictable what's going to happen with staff, right? If there's going to be staff out with side effects and things of that nature, that's why it's nice it's on a Tuesday and then we have that Wednesday.
Okay, let me adjust it to the following Monday. What's the date?
12?
The 12th.
The 12th.
It's only 7 days from the 19th.
Are we having fun yet?
We were.
It's, again, the issue with the 12th is the same issue that comes up with the week before, is if anybody comes with positive case, teachers are now quarantined for 2 weeks. Anybody, so again, is those 4 days of in-person worth us losing staff and then possibly having to close down? That's where I'm trying to balance it, because now somebody could have to we have to quarantine, and we might be able to do it, we might not be able to do it, but hopefully with our numbers being low, as you've talked about, we'd be able to do it. Where once you get past that 19th date, they don't have to quarantine anymore. That's huge for us.
Well, we had a meeting last Wednesday for facility and finance, and you were kind enough to tell us what you were thinking then, which is both good and it's bad. The bad part is, I've been thinking about it a lot and every day, and multiple times a day, trying to figure out what risk I'm willing to take, and good gosh, can't we push it a little? So that's where I'm at. And I'm consistent in that because I tried to bring the kids back blended between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
I would be willing to bet, and again, this is just off the top of my head, and from my experience in our district, the times we've had to shut down is because we haven't had enough staff. And not because staff have gotten sick, just from close contacts. It's really hard. It's surprising how quickly your staff go out, I think, before kids do, depending on where the kids have traveled, if it's a staff that travels. Like, if you have a staff that travels to many rooms, and that staff gets quarantined or shows symptoms, like, you take out all those rooms that they've been in too. I totally appreciate the risk that you want to take. I just don't know if the risk of 4 extra days outweighs waiting 4 days till everybody's had that wants to be vaccinated has had that second shot that no longer has to quarantine. You're talking 4 days versus 10 to 14, without staff that could shut down an entire building. You lose, 4 or 5 staff, your building's done because there's nobody to replace those people.
I don't think the 4 days is going to hurt us. I think that would be the way, yep. I think we're good to go with the recommendation.
Well, I'm actually kind of surprised that I made the motion because I'm really kind of on the fence of why shake up the basket now? I mean, we're so close to finishing the year. We're so close as a society of hopefully turning this thing around, and we're just gonna, as some would say, give up, which I know we're not. But I do see the viability in doing this, and so I'm willing to do it. But like I said, I'm kind of shocked that I was the one that made the recommendation, because probably I would have made a different one if it was.
So, kids I know that are not making it right now, and so having 7 weeks with a teacher is better than 0 weeks with a teacher live.
Absolutely.
So,
yep.
I feel like we're addressing the issues of the most vulnerable people. So staff members having the opportunity to be fully vaccinated, giving an online option for any kids who, for whatever reason would prefer that we, taken off the table some of the worst consequences that we have been trying to prevent. And that I think there's enough kids that really want to be back and should be back, that those last 7 weeks can make a big difference.
Agreed.
Well, and I just want to point, COVID fatigue is real, right? Yes. Having to deal with this stuff all the time is exhausting, and we're all going through it. I don't think this recommendation or the motion that's in front of the board has anything to do with us, with that fatigue, right? It's looking at what has the most recent science shown us. What are schools doing that have been successful in coming back in person? Where are our numbers? It's based on those pieces. It's not based on people banging down our doors and saying we need to have kids back in school. It's not, or vice versa, that we shouldn't have it. It just, for me, it just seems like it's the right time in looking at all those data and I'm the one who gets to track probably most of it more than anybody, right? I'm looking at it constantly and digging into it. It just feels like this is, I don't have the analogy I used with the staff was, it's kind of like when we talk about snow days, and I had a staff member talk about that, like, you know, if there's any risk, Vince, we call snow days and we don't have school. And I'm like, well, that's not quite accurate, right? When we have snow days, you know, I get up really early in the morning and I consult a lot of different people. I, you know, call other superintendents, call the plow companies, I call, you know, the county, sometimes the sheriff, the bus company, and try to make the best decision possible, right? And when it's not safe, we don't have school. In the fall, that's the way we felt, right? We just didn't feel like we had enough information that it was safe. And even when I talked to other superintendents who were bringing their kids back to school, what I heard was, we're gonna be closed by October. And then, so it was like, why are you bringing it back? Well, because my community's demanding that we do, but we don't think this is a good idea. And they were surprised that it didn't spread, right? So then we get to a little later in the year, and there's another day like that. We sit down, we look through the data, just like I would get up in the morning for a snow day, and, well, the risks doesn't seem quite as bad, but I'm still not sure. Maybe a 2-hour delay is in the works here, and that's what we did. We did a blended learning. But we never call school just because there's some risk, right? There's the mornings I get up, there's been 4 inches of snow overnight, and we're like, no, it's still, I mean, there's some risks, some spots, yep, we all know where they are, and it's never perfect. But there's a time, like, there's a time to call that snow day, there's a time to go, no, we're just gonna have a regular day of school. And I get calls about those too, right? Both ways. But that's the decision that has to be made, and that's where we are right now, is I think in a spot where there's risk, that's not gonna go away. But it's as minimal as it's been since we've started having these discussions in July. And we know more, as we've talked about it many times in this meeting, we always know more every meeting we come to. We know more now than we do in July. Because you always Monday morning quarterback it, right? It's really easy to do that. And that's the problem right now. That's the fear. The fear is not the data. The fear is the uncertainty that we all have. Every one of us. Like, we don't know what COVID's gonna do in a month or 6 weeks from now. We just don't know. We you know, we can look at the projections right now with CDC and the DHS show, which are good. But it's that uncertainty and the variants that are out there. But our variants have not mutated against a mask, right? The mask still works. Hand washing still works against variants. So, again, that's where I came down with that recommendation. It's been a lot of time looking at it and trying to come up with what I think is best for our students, our families, our staff, and our community, and that's what I think is best.
Ready to vote? Any further discussion? Barb, we're gonna do a roll call vote. So Barb?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Shelley?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Yes.
And Adam, yes, 7-0. Coming back on the 19th April.
Thank you.
Next, spring co-curricular season.
Yeah, so we have, typically, obviously, we don't have to approve having our co-curricular seasons, but since we've approved the winter season and then the alternate spring season, we felt or fall season, we should probably formally approve the spring season coming up. So there is a memo in here just discussing that. We don't have a lot of specifics on what the guidelines are gonna be like for spectators, things like that. There's a conference meeting coming up this Wednesday. And obviously, we can always come back if we have concerns, but we just are looking for approval so we can get going planning and starting everything that like we normally would for our spring sports season.
I'll make a motion to approve the middle school and high school spring sports seasons to progress the schedule.
I'll second.
Motion by Barb and a second by Shelley. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. Elementary school parking lot resurfacing.
Yeah, so the Facility and Finance Committee spent a lot of time discussing options for either repaving or putting concrete over the elementary school OSC parking lot and playground areas. It's time, it's breaking up. The committee voted to recommend to the full board that the district proceed with resurfacing these areas with concrete. That comes with a little more cost, but there's less maintenance over the lifespan of it. So actually, if that holds true, it's a cheaper option down the road. One of the concerns one of the members brought up was, how long is this elementary school gonna be here to make that worthwhile? So that was part of the discussion, but overall it was approved for us to bring that with the addition of adding a parking lot light in the middle of the parking lot. And the discussion there really went to, you really can't put it on the edge, because there was concerns about like snow plows hitting it. You can't really put it on the edge to provide the light. And there's so many youth activities that happen in this, these gymnasiums. The school, first of all, obviously, but then at night with the gymnasium, there's always basketball practices or other practices going on, and there's kids in and out and running through, and it's a parking lot. So we just felt we needed to add some light out there as well. So both of them are here for your discussion and approval.
So is this out of the budgetary money, or is this out of Fund 80, or where is this coming from?
We'll be looking at a combination of Fund 10 and Fund 41.
41.
So I'll make a motion to approve the resurfacing of the elementary school parking lot and playground with concrete by Mills Flat Work and the addition of the parking lot lights installed by Westfall Electric as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Stephen and a second by Shelley. Any further discussion?
Yes. So, I was the committee person not in favor of the concrete because, yes, the building, I guess was built in 1958. The current asphalt parking lot has been there for 17 years, if I remember correctly through our discussions.
You got 17 years
And
out of
that,
the parking lot? That's a long
I
time.
mean the asphalt, it was resurfaced 17 years
Right,
ago.
we got 17 years out of a parking lot. That's amazing.
Right, okay, so, and it was asphalt, and apparently, I'm just kind of restating what we discussed. There was some discussion that there was not, the proper, thickness put on, and it still lasted 17 years. The asphalt bid came in about 50,000 less than the concrete. Well, actually, the concrete, if we add fiber to it, is gonna be a little more expensive too, so it's probably about a $60,000 difference. And if we were to go with asphalt, it would have to be resurfaced every 3 years at approximate cost of $20,000. But my whole point is, is asphalt good enough? It's gonna last 20 years. Are we gonna be using this school in 20 years? That's my whole issue with this.
So the last 20 years,
We're
but you're still resurfacing it every, how many years?
Not
3.
3 years?
Sealing it every.
Sealing it every
For-
3.
Sealing it and restriping.
For $20,000?
Yep.
Yes.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
Yep. And it's a lot of, I don't know, it's a lot of hassle to keep up with it. And not to say that there's not gonna be things that we'll still have to restripe on the concrete. Hopefully not every 3 years, but maybe. And there'll be there'll probably be crack sealing with that as well, but.
I'd be for putting up the light and maybe not doing the resurfacing or sealing or
We have to,
whatever.
you have to do something to the.
We have to do something
You gotta
with
be
it.
concrete or asphalt?
Asphalt.
Yeah, so the other thing is we would go back and do the asphalt, which, like you said, would be 60,000 less.
But then
But then every 3 years.
recurring,
Yeah.
There's a recurring cost that comes with that.
Right, so in about
Right.
3 times
Three
or whatever,
times
by
it
10
becomes-
years.
okay, I see
it
what-
would, in
I see
10
where
years,
the
it would be on an
equivalence
even
is,
keel
yeah.
then with what we would spend on the concrete roughly.
Right, so if we thought we wouldn't be in that building for 10 years
10
from
years.
now.
Well, it was built in 1958.
Right, with the
Right.
current remodeling that we just did to that building, the longevity of that building was set for 10 years.
Okay, yeah. I thought we set it for 10 years a long time ago.
According to everything that was done, it was supposed to last another 10 years, so, I don't know, Mike would agree with that, he's in that building every day. But,
I think when I tell people how old it is, they're sometimes shocked. So I feel like it's a credit to, some of the maintenance that's been done. Some of the other things are a little bit more unique, like when I learned that the HVAC guy came in and said I'm making it up, so I'm not sure the exact number, but we have 18 air handlers, whatever it's in the ballpark of that. So when I say making it up, I'm not completely making it up. And Westtown Mall has 22. Like that, I still, it's always, that when people build buildings, they trade something for another. I would love to know what they traded for 18 air handlers. There was a reason that it happened, but that is very hard to manage. And then also as you remodel, there are just some idiosyncrasies with putting a new system with an old system and how they mesh. And so it's not without problems, but I also wouldn't be like, oh my God, the sky's falling and we're in horrible shape. The one thing, since you asked me, the light in the parking lot. One is an absolute must. I mean, I wasn't part of, those discussions. It is blacker than black out there. To Vince's point, we'll have 2, 3, 4 shifts, sometimes 5 shifts of kids coming through, and in the winter time, because that's when everybody needs indoor space. And it is like unbelievably dark. Like, it always strikes me every winter. I'm like, this is so dark. I mean, so thank you for one light and anything that you do on the pothole. And truly, like, some of the potholes, I'm like walking out, stumbling because like it's not light enough to see some of the potholes. So I mean, like, that's not even car danger for kids walking through.
I do want to say that when that building was built, I was 1 year old. So that's how old I am.
I won't tell you how old I was then.
Diapers.
So we have no way of predicting the future on enrollment numbers. People are not having kids like they used to have kids, and so in theory, our numbers are gonna continue to decline unless we attract more people here, and then we can get more. So if the numbers do continue to decline, I doubt we'll build a new building, and we'll probably reshuffle where our kids are into other buildings.
That was the plan from a long time ago.
Yeah, and that speaks to a couple other things that we need to do, right? At some point, shortly, we need to do a population study, right?
Yeah.
Or, right?
Yep.
Yeah, population study. We probably do, again, have our architects, if they did a lifespan of this building, or have a look at what that lifespan of that building is. That wasn't part of that process. Those things should all happen here probably in the next couple of years, probably next year.
They did look at the lifespan of that.
Yeah, so they may have that
7 to 10
information.
years.
Right, so I'm sure they did. I'm sure they'd had it, but, now that they've done the updates, now what would they say would it be?
Right.
Right, so, because obviously the district spent a lot of money updating that building, feeling it was a usable space. So that's
The other
something
thing
that,
I'd say is that even if we weren't using that building, it's someone in the community is going to be using it. This building is not going anywhere in 10 years, so we'll still be using this building. So it's not, and I think we're at a unique time, as Bill said, and I think I agree with him, is that we never really would have thought that concrete would even be affordable.
Right.
But we're at a unique place and time where concrete at the moment is at the price it's at, and oil products are at the price they're at. And as Neil said, the oil products, the maintenance on that is going up every time we do it. So it might be 20,000 now, but it might be 25, 30,000 later on. So it's a gamble, but I think one thing we've always done is invested well in our facilities. We've cheaped out, and sometimes in the way back past, as Bill will point out to us.
And paid for it.
And paid for it, and so this is an area where I think, we kind of said this was a place where we're gonna get our money's worth out of it, I think.
Well, I called up the numbers that it cost us to do the parking lot that's out there right now in asphalt. And the numbers I pulled out of my computer, which my computer hadn't been invented yet, was $190,000. And I can remember how distasteful it was because they laid it all in one layer. They didn't do it in like 2 layers like they should have. So we had an open porous surface from the start. The concrete we're talking about, you're talking about a life expectancy. You really can't do that with concrete. I've got concrete in my territory that's older than I am. It just, the parking lot and the potholes and the stuff that Mr. Pisani was talking about have been a headache forever. The difference with concrete is the blocks of concrete would be cut, if you can think of the parking lot itself being in blocks, it would be cut. And to one manner of speaking, each block would float or go up or down as the weather changes. So it would have the potential of a very long lifespan. I think this would be a good time for us to invest. This is the worst area we have for a parking lot in our district because of what's underneath it. I was pushing the concrete. I think it's our best shot, our most economical.
So the entire time I've been on the board, we have not had enough gym space. And I don't see us getting rid of those two gyms ever. We have to have those gyms. Even if we don't have the buildings, we need the gyms.
And just to piggyback on what Bill said, Mills Flatwork did do borings to check the base. And the base underneath our blacktop is not very thick in spots, right, as Bill talked about. But the base underneath that is very solid for every place they bored. Now what's underneath that base is what Bill's kind of talking about, right? I mean, we have water all over the place, right? But the gravel base is solid underneath that parking lot. That was one of the things we wanted to check on before we laid anything over the top of it.
Okay, the motion is for concrete. That's what's on the table. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, passes 7-0.
Steve changed my mind.
Okay, passes 7-0.
I mean, if you would have said that, maybe at the other meeting.
It's all right.
CISA 5 contract.
Yeah, every year we bring a CISA 5 contract in front of the board. So Ms. Loken, Dr. Carls, and myself met with representatives of CISA 5 to review the provisions of our annual contract. Our recommendation is to approve this contract. It is approximately a little over $5,000 less than last year's. We dropped off a Safe and Healthy Schools portion, but it was $1,200, which we feel we can do ourselves, do some of the training ourselves, and then we don't have to pay that ongoing cost. And we dropped the educational technology piece, which we haven't been using, especially this year with our technology buffet with Tyler, what he's been doing, and then our technology buffet where we've had our teachers teaching each other. We haven't needed that. So there may be an offset where there's a couple days that we will need additional time from CISA, but we're not going to have that in the contract. It'll still be cheaper than $5,000, so it's cheaper to do it this way.
I'll make a motion to approve the CISA 5 contract as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Shelley and a second by Angie. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? This is 7-0. Next, we have the summer school program review.
All right, well, before you know it, it'll be summer, right? So we have to start talking about summer school and programming. So typically at this time of year, we are reviewing and approving our summer school plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bassani and Ms. Fossbender to talk about it.
So Amy and I talked before the meeting of who would like to talk, and I was nominated, so I will speak for both of us, unless you have a burning desire to hear from Ms. Fossbender, or I say something wrong and she helps me. So very quickly, the memo summarizes a lot of the details. We're planning at this point at a summer school program that looks very similar to 2 summers ago. Meaning at the high school, meaning in person. Mitigation strategies aren't clearly known, but that's where we're planning right now. We did open up to our staff, because we do a course proposal always, to see what online options would be brought forward. And we didn't know where it was going to go, but there was very few online options brought forward with course proposals. So we are in the process right now. We have a posting out. We have some classes that we are planning to run that we don't have staff for, so we have those postings out. The documents that are attached give you all the courses that were proposed and the courses that we're planning to run. If there was a teacher proposing it and is intending to teach it, then that is in the documents that you have. If there is not a name, that means there isn't somebody to teach it. Our next step then is to open it up and start with enrollments, and then we do a review to see what we get for, enrollment number that would be sustainable for the class. If we don't have, if we have a teacher, but we don't have enough enrollment for the class, then we would talk to that teacher about, would you like to do something else? And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Sometimes, they would prefer to teach what they proposed, and if that doesn't go, then they're okay. And other times they're like, yeah, I wanted to teach, this is what I was gonna, this was my first version, and I'm willing to do what else you have. So, that's really where we are, but I'm excited to tell you too that we get to bring back some, kind of bring back, like theater and things that we had to nix last last summer. So that really is the gist of the documents that you have. I would take any questions, or if you have any questions for Amy as well.
So it's still, I think I said this earlier, it's still, we can still get people in with their course proposals now at this time?
Course proposals would be a little bit harder because we're planning, like the information is out to families. So if the course proposals come in late, it makes it more challenging. It is not necessarily impossible, but challenging, and I see Emma's on too, and she would be able to maybe answer that detail a little bit better, but we've been trying to be more clear about our timelines so that there's less need to modify on short notice, because that does make for challenges.
Okay.
But you do have classes that are open looking for instructors.
Correct.
So,
Yes. 3 to be exact.
I will make a motion to approve the 2021 summer school program as presented.
Second.
motion by Stephen and a second by Bill. Further discussion. The one question I have is, Vince, do you know, in the federal money that's being approved, that was already approved, whatever, isn't there money in there for tutoring students who are falling behind?
Yeah, so there's a lot of flexibility in what we can use that money for, absolutely. Yeah, so that would be one of the options. One of the options that may become in front of the curriculum committee is a possibility too, that the governor has floated out, or DPI has shared that they'd be willing to even allow schools to start early next year as well. So I think that needs to go to committee before it come back here. But yes, that's a long answer to your short question. Yes, they would be able to.
At some point, we'll do some sort of assessment on our students. We're doing the forward exam, we're doing other stuff, and try to figure out who needs, getting them to come take that is a whole nother can of worms, I get it, but.
Right, so we use that, that's not the only piece of information we'll use. We'll use other pieces of information from our students as well, and we will, the idea will be whenever we start school next fall is to hit the ground running, right? You know, not wait 6 weeks to figure out who's behind or who need to hit the ground first day, kind of like we did this year, hit the ground that first day with some of our most needy kids came to school. Same thing, like have that plan put in place.
Just a note as well, I mean, with the recent decision you just made tonight, and with our local assessment data, something like the iReady assessment that we're able to give to our students, here with the winter benchmark assessment window, we'll have some flexibility probably within our days, having students full days, 4 days a week in-house, to be able to put in some intervention systems that we potentially were not able to do thus far this school year. So hitting the ground running starting next school year, yes, but potentially also here in April, putting in some things that we weren't able to do before. So.
And I noticed in this plan, there is tutoring in this plan of kids who have fallen behind, which we have every summer, but if that needs to be expanded in any way.
Yeah, the hard part is always with anything like summer or anytime, it's like now, like we have some kids who should be in blended, who have chosen online, right? Online's not working well for them, we're trying to get them in the blended. They're not coming. And some of them will choose online later, instead of coming in person. They really need to be in person. And so it's really hard sometimes with that to try to get kids, but absolutely, we will identify those kids and provide the supports, all the supports that we can.
Okay. Anybody else? Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 7-0. Strategic planning process. Oh, something fun to talk about.
Yeah, strategic. Man.
Summer school wasn't fun?
No, summer school was fun too.
So we had our first meeting with our Vision Element Study team last Thursday. We have 12 community members that this board selected after mapping out the community.
Can I read them off so they know who they are?
Yes, I would like to know too.
Okay, so Rachel Whipperfirth did say yes, and she's there. Ann Groves Lloyd said yes, and she is there. Mandy Stitzman said yes, and she is there. Jeff Lorenz is there. Tyler Potter is there. Mary Wilkes from Reach Out Lodi is there. Nick Prosek is there. Sky Barron is there. Justin Johnson is there. Jen Morgan. Heather Hatley. Joel Crane. And that's all. And then Vince and myself.
Yeah, so again, I think the board chose very well. First of all, it was interesting because when you mentioned it, I first, asked them to introduce themselves, and one of them initially said, well, my name's such and such. I'm like, no. Poor directions on Vince's part. Tell us about yourself, what you do, kids in the district, not in the district, and it was pretty quickly available that you could, as they said afterwards, like, now I know why I'm here, right? Who I represent, right? Because, I'm a local businessman, I'm involved in the Sigma organization, I have 2 young kids. I'm in the FFA alumni, I'm like, you could just tell, like, why so they knew that. And they were so engaged,
Yes.
right? I mean, they, our facilitator did a nice job talking stuff through. They were quiet and sit down with thoughts, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, and this back and forth and discussions that happened. They were enthusiastic. Typically you have a meeting on a Wednesday night after people are really tired, and they even talked about that. Like, I didn't know if I wanted to come to another meeting. It's all day, I work all day, and then I could come to a 2-hour meeting. And that was over, and nobody left, right? They all got up and talked to each other and had conversations, and as Adam said, he and I are part of this. Adam's the representative for the board, so he's the only, Nick's on it as well, as a student. I'm the only administrator there because it's not a board-driven piece at this point, and it's not an administrative-driven piece at this point. It is the community group reaching out to mapping out the community and pulling in other members of the community to run this process. And that's what this group is going to do, is plan an event where they can help us set priorities for the district, so.
I have a question.
They generally seem excited to be there doing the work.
Yeah.
So, couldn't ask for more.
Yeah, that was cool. Well, yeah, that was all good. So my question is, at some point, do we get to ask people if they're interested, or that's only gonna be led by the other people?
So what'll happen is this group will map out the community, and like, these are the people that we really wanna have there, but it will be open to anybody.
Okay.
Right, so when you have a community event, it's gonna be open to anybody who wants to come and have that, be a part of that conversation. Their goal is to make sure that when you map out a community, that we don't miss a section, right? That you ask people, and all of a sudden there's this whole section of our community that doesn't get asked, and doesn't show up. And then who are not invested into that process. So that's the idea of mapping out the community. And obviously as board members, you're members of the community, but now you're asking these people who represent different parts of the community to map it out even further. So it's a wider web of interconnectedness. And the
Okay, we
idea
just step back because they're doing the work. We don't have to think about it.
Nope.
I don't, okay.
This is just to update you what's going on right now. You'll be asked to participate in that community event.
Yeah.
And provide your thoughts and ideas about what should happen, but and again, what we're looking for out of that event is themes, right? Because a lot of people have different thoughts, but then you pull all that information together, what are the themes that emerge from all these different conversations? And that'll be that's what that team will then do, right? They will look at all that information. Our facilitator will help kind of put together some ideas, like, this is what I've kind of heard from all this information, what do you think? And they will help finalize those themes and then present it back to the Board of Education in July. And I echo Adam that they were excited, happy to be there, and excited about doing it, and asking, why is it taking so long for us to do this, right? There's a couple of those in there as well. Yeah, it was good.
Any other questions? We have policy first readings.
Yeah, so there are quite a few policies there. Policies and exhibits were reviewed at the policy committee on February 17th, are recommended for board approval. This is the first read, so nothing has to happen. So policy 830, public use of school facilities and grounds, and then exhibit 1, exhibit 2, exhibit 3, exhibit 4, and rule 1, all about our facilities and rental facilities and fees. And we talked about this a little bit at the last board meeting when we talked about the stadium fees and things of that nature. And then the second one is policy and procedure for administration and prescription of non-prescription medication, which has gone to the policy committee a couple times. It was put together by Tiffany and Jean Winter, our school nurse, who did a phenomenal job of putting that together.
Okay, those will show up as a second reading next month. And we'll have more first readings for you next month, too. There are no second readings. There is one gift.
Yeah, so I'm gonna actually turn this over to.
Because she's here.
Yeah, I'm here. So yeah, we got quite the present for Valentine's Day. So envelope came anonymous, with $1,200 for our staff, for us to use for our students and our school. So, whoever did this, we are so incredibly grateful. It was one of the coolest experiences, I think, of my entire teaching career to open this up and get this. And as a school, we're starting to brainstorm what we can do, for our students and come together with some ideas, whether it goes towards Heritage Park or something with books or whatever. We just want to do something to just to show our gratitude for this, incredible gift. So.
You know what they say, Lodi's the surprise that keeps on giving.
Well, this was.
I would be willing to accept the gift with great gratitude.
I'll second that.
Motion by Bill, second by Stephen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you for the gift. Administrator reports, Lodi Primary School.
So we are starting parent-teacher conferences the week of March 15th, and those are for families that are interested in having that, or else ones that teachers have reached out specifically just to really make sure that we're supporting the students as we move into the end of the school year. So we have that going on. We also are beginning to start doing some of our planning actually for next year for class lists and all of that. So this will start that process as well. So now we'll have the kind of two that will be obviously now with this decision coming back, but then also with next year's plan, we're beginning to work through those pieces there. And then during the February PLCs that I was working with staff, we really started thinking about the time that we have, the 2.5 hours, and now we'll have more, but really just diving into our literacy practices and just engaged in some great conversations on how we can differentiate for our students. And then behaviors, we did a mid-year check-in to see some of the PBIS structures that we have in place and just trying to look and see how are we currently doing and what are we implementing in this blended format. And now we'll be able to dive into them a little bit deeper this last part of the year.
Thank you. Nick, you're up next.
Yeah. So the advocate's been staying busy, keeping us, or providing the students with weekly updates, and just what's going on at LHS and beyond in the community. The ACT is tomorrow for the juniors, and then Wednesday it's the sophomore and pre-ACT. So good luck to all of them. And then our Lodi volleyball team is putting on a personal essentials drive for every home game that they have, and I think the boxes will just be outside the main gym doors, and then proceeds will go to Reach Out Lodi. And then I did just have a little section on here about, we did have student sections at the postseason sporting events for the girls and the boys. And I attended all 4 of the games.
We saw your pictures in there.
Yes, yeah, and I did add a couple pictures on there. I guess just to highlight the main points, I thought from the students' perspective that we all did an amazing job social distancing. I thought that it went a lot better than I thought, and it was more effective than I thought it would be. I thought us standing 6 feet apart would just seem like we're all just standing there, but it still felt like having the Lodi pride spirit at the games was nice. And then I just have something here. I talked to quite a bit of the Lodi girls basketball team athletes and just see what their perspective was on it, and they thought that we helped contribute to their wins a lot. They won the regional title, and they were seeded 3rd, and they played the 2nd seed and the 1st seed and beat them both times, which I thought was pretty cool. And all the other schools that we competed against didn't have student sections, so that kind of made Lodi unique in that sense. And then just at the bottom of my report, I just put Claire Scheneman's letter in the Advocate about us being there.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Elementary OSC.
Yeah, one of the big focuses of the report was that we are looking at our PBIS expectations of positive behavior interventions and supports. Currently, our expectations are be respectful, be responsible, and be safe, which are fairly standard expectations for schools, for elementary schools especially, but didn't resonate a ton with our staff, and we really kind of took a step back with the help of our new social worker, Michaela Lee, and really tried to get at, so what's at the heart and the soul of our school, and have those be expectations instead of be more compliance-based. space. That's a shift that PBIS is making nationally as well. She's done a great job of leading it, and so we kind of have narrowed in on new expectations of belonging, support, kindness, growth mindset, and safety. So by narrowing in, it's not settled yet, but we are definitely closing in, and that was going through a process to asking staff. The data tables that you see, or the graphs that you see, is from her time in an intersection of lots of things that you get to hear about. So while she's teaching social emotional learning in the classroom, she did a survey with all of our kids to talk about what these things look like. And so I'm very excited to share with you that when we ask kids if they belong at LES and OSC, you can see what those results are. I would have guessed that they would have been decent, but honestly, they were higher than I thought they were going to be, so that's very exciting. And then, again, the tables, and then I make others feel like they belong. So what we noticed is that kids felt like they belonged more than they felt like they made others belong, which was interesting. And then support is a similar setup where, again, they feel supported by classmates. And then last is kindness. So, you know, like we all, is what we're doing having any impact on kids? And this would show that it is having some impact, and that the kids are having an impact on each other, not just the adults having an impact. And then the second part is mid-year assessments, like Dr. Carl's mentioned. So we just completed our mid-year assessments from our iReady. So that was a good learning opportunity because some kids took it in person in the fall and in the winter. Some took it at home in the fall and the winter, and some kids took it at home in the fall and in person in the winter. So we'll go through all of that data, take a look at where we are, and then the last thing in there is daily announcements. And so I include one for you, but for February we did February's Black History Month. So every day for February we had a question about some sort of influential person, alive or dead, from the African American community, so that our kids were getting to see a much wider range of influential African Americans.
Nice.
And if you ever watch them, there's really good dancing at the beginning of them too.
Yes, I do watch those. Lodi Middle School.
Yes, just want to highlight a few things from my report and then just bring up a few other items. Included a lot of pictures in there, but the first thing I wanted to highlight was the Valentine activity, very pertinent after last month's presentation. Our students did a personal essentials drive and really had a great turnout. We also did some activities called Be the Change. So really working, showing students and having them support the school and the community and the importance of that. There's also a cool bit emoji deal there that I shared some pictures for you. Also want to highlight Jade Dolmas, Brenna Richardson, Emily Tenbarge, and Josie Varna for representing the middle school in the statewide Battle of the Books. So I will kind of fill you in on how that's going, but they have been reading a list of books, and then they have to answer some extensive trivia, and they are doing very well. So I want to thank Paula Tunt for organizing that. We finished 2 sessions of conferences, February 18th and then March 8th. So we did those virtually, but again, had great turnout from parents. Want to give a shout out to the PTO and thank them for the support that they are providing students in the district. And the last thing has just been working on planning for next year, looking at making some scheduling changes and developing a more robust multi-tier system of support that we can implement next school year.
So you saying that makes me want to ask. So I know in some of the other groups I'm involved with, we've offered Zoom sessions for people, and we see more people attending, right? It's like nobody would ever show up to these meetings that we have, and then we offered online, and suddenly there's people there. So next year, when we don't have COVID again, could we keep stuff like online?
I will tell you that I think this will definitely change the way we do conferences. I think this is, we have a program, and what is it called, You Book Me. Does cost the building a little bit of money, but it sign up, automatically schedules Google Meets. And I honestly agree with you, Adam. I think it is easier on parents because they have a set time, they know when to do it. Vince gave me feedback from the first one, as he is a middle school parent, so I heard. But just on how convenient it was.
Right.
And so I definitely think, I can't say that we'll take away, you know, because I think some people.
No,
do
definitely
wanna
keep
meet
in person too,
face-to-face,
yeah.
But I do believe that this will change the way we do a number of activities in the future. I think I mentioned that a few board meetings ago, like, there's a lot of negatives with this, but there's also a number of positives that we've taken away on how we can do things better.
Good, okay. High school, Joe.
All right, thanks, Adam. I'm going to highlight a few things that are in the report, and then I have a couple of additions. First of all, you probably saw the 10-year anniversary of our distance education program. Adam had an opportunity to kind of come at the tail end of that. I think he just came because that's when we were getting the cake ready to go. But he was able to be there, so it was a very unique experience, probably one of the most unique experiences I've ever been through.
It was very unique.
Yes, so a virtual celebration with a school on the other side of the world. And they had a lot more people at their celebration. But I want to thank, first of all, Mark Cole for being that distance educator for many years. Crew Chats, many of you have met Crew Chat before. I think he's actually been to a couple board meetings when he's been visiting. And that program, that distance education program, is the only one in the state of Wisconsin as far as I know. So it's a really unique program. Again, I want to thank Mark Cole, Mr. Breinig, who was there and was able to present, JP Fossbender, who has been our exchange coordinator for a lot of years now, and him organizing that. Also, Kelsey Barlow was there, who is our new exchange coordinator or co-exchange coordinator for the Thailand program. And then two students, Amelia Hyder and Ava Glazer, who did an outstanding job with their presentations at that event. A couple other highlights. I did mention something about, I think one of the things that Vince always told me is that he's never home in the spring when he was the high school principal. So his family does not see him very often. So there are a lot of activities that are going on, and we are trying to make as many of those activities in person, of course, safely. For instance, we are organizing, we're putting together the Outstanding Impact Awards, which is a great evening. I had an opportunity to do, to be at that event one time, and it was very memorable. And there are other events like Fine Arts Night, NHS Awards Night, Seniors Honor Night, which is our scholarship night. Many of you have probably been there before. And then obviously our graduation. So we're working towards trying to have those in person. Obviously there'll be a limited number of people that can be at those events, but we'd like to bring them into our PAC, which we have plenty of room in. So we're going to try to do those things. Nick mentioned the ACT, so we do have the ACT for juniors tomorrow, and then sophomores on Wednesday. And I want to thank Emily Hendricks, Grant Lemke, and Kathy Trinan in our guidance office for all of the work that they had to do. It goes unnoticed, the amount of work that our school counselors have to do to get ready for that test and to make sure it runs smoothly, so I want to thank them. You saw a lot of pictures in my report. I know you requested some pictures, so I added some this week. Nick mentioned the student section. So we were thrown off a little bit, our administration team, when we found out there were a bunch of students that were going to go to Richland Center. And we were like, okay, so we're going to have to do something about this because we want them to socially distance. So Jason and Marshall and I were able to work with the AD at Richland Center. They X'd off spots. Our students did a great job down there, and then a great job at Westby as well, and then eventually for our home game for our boys. And I would agree with Nick, it made a difference. Our girls really appreciated them being there, and we felt like we could do it safely, and the kids did a tremendous job. So I want to thank Nick and the students for following our protocols while they were there. Speaking of Nick, and you probably know this already. So I want to say Nick was probably in 4th grade. I think you moved here when you were in 4th grade? 5th grade, okay. So I was announcing a high school track meet, which I really like to do, and you get to be outside. I see this kid walk across, and I kind of knew who he was because he lived in our neighborhood at the time, and he sat down next to me, talked to me a little bit, and then 45 minutes later, still talking to me, this 5th grader, and I really didn't know who I was, and I was like, this is a pretty interesting kid. This is a pretty cool kid. And I talked to him some more, got to know him a little bit better. Obviously, Saw him in the middle school a little bit, know his family pretty well. It does not surprise me at all because of everything that he's done, probably since he was in middle school, to prepare him for receiving the Cole Fellowship. So I want to recognize that him receiving that scholarship. He has done everything that he could possibly do to the point where it's almost too much and I've talked to his mom about this, but he's done everything that he can do because I think he really cares about our school and our community. So I want to recognize Nick for receiving the 2021 Herb Cole Student Excellence Scholarship. So.
And.
Yeah. And as you know, Nick is the son of Joe and Tara Prosek, so.
Hold that against him.
Yeah. Hold that against him. Thank goodness for his mother. No, I'm kidding. Also, we were very lucky to have another fellowship winner, and it was a teacher. So many of you know Derek Pertzborn. Derek Pertzborn has been a leader in our math department and a leader in our building and a leader in our district for many years. So it does not surprise me that he received that award. Derek's family consists of his wife Emily, who is a teacher at the middle school, daughter Tessa, and son Nolan. So I wanted to recognize him as well. So congratulations, Derek Pertzborn. I have a couple additions. It's only going to take a second. First of all, I received an email today. I want to recognize two track coaches, Randy Skelliger, and who's our head track coach, and then James Hodek, who's an assistant track coach. I received an email from Mark Hoffman, who works in the Wisconsin Track Coaches Association, just letting me know how important these track coaches are to their association. So it really made me realize that a lot of our coaches are not just very much involved with our kids locally and with their families, but they reach out and they do a lot of things in the state. So I wanted to recognize Randy and James. And then finally, I received a letter probably about a week and a half ago, and maybe this name, for those people that have been in Lodi for a long time, Tom Ellinger. He is a former English teacher. And I'm just going to quickly read part of this. I was an English teacher at Lodi High School from 1974 to 1976. During that time, among other duties, I was the advisor for the school literacy magazine. It was one of my most rewarding experiences of my teaching career. The Lodi students were alive, awake, their perceptions of themselves and the world around them were fresh, clear, and articulate. I've carried copies of these literacy or literary magazines with me through the years. Though aged and faded around the edges much as I am, they still speak of our students' lives at the time. I am now retired, and my wife and I are engaged in the inevitable ritual of letting go of material possessions collected over the years. Some of them, such as my copies of the Lodi Literary Magazine, carries enough meaning that I cannot bring myself to simply dispose of them. So I'm sending them to you, which is me, back home, so to speak, thinking of you and your staff may find them of interest. I'm grateful for the years I spent in Lodi. The students I taught were delightful people, and over the years it's become clear to me that they taught me as much or more than I taught them. And so it should be between students and teachers. All the best to you, your staff, your students in these challenging times. So if you have an opportunity at the end of the meeting, these are the originals. So he sent these. There are 3 copies of them. They're really amazing. Barb Cook, who is an EA at our high school, she's quite the poet. So there are many of her works in here. So if you do have an opportunity, you can take a look at these after the meeting. But I just wanted to mention them because I thought it was so cool. So.
Why don't you just send it now? Send it.
Yes, absolutely.
Can I just say a quick note about Derek Pertzborn?
Sure.
I was the musical director at that time, and Derek was the really top-notch baseball guy. And he ended up getting the lead in the musical, and I said, well, you know, there's tap, he goes, what is all this in it? I said, well, there's tap dancing, but you know, you probably don't want to do it. And he goes, oh, yes, I do. So Jeannie Cole, Mark Cole's husband, Mark Cole's wife, Jeannie, did the tap dance, and Derek Pertzborn was the lead, and he was in all 4 musicals and all 4 plays and leads in all of them, and a leader throughout the whole time he's been here.
He was also a tuba player for the UW band.
Absolutely. So was Jeff Dorn.
Yeah.
Jeff Dorn in '88
Yep.
was tuba player for the UW band.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Curriculum.
Yeah. Yo, man, following up high school.
Sorry.
No, it's good stuff.
Okay, so we have the first item on my board report is in regards to a possible dual credit opportunity that we're continuing to investigate with our Spanish 5 course that would give students the opportunity to earn some college credits and then a number of retro credits that would really set them up well. So that's something that we're going to continue discussion with the curriculum committee of the board, so just wanted to make you aware of that. We are entering the hiring season, so we are starting to work with the administrative team, get postings up on our WeCan, which is the educator application site around the state. But also something that we're looking at doing is participating in the Wisconsin Educational Recruitment Fair, WRF it's called, and that will be happening later in March, where it'll be virtual this year. It's usually held at the Monona Terrace in Madison. And students who just graduated from any UW institution can come there and they can apply to one of the open slots that we have and talk to us virtually about our openings that we have. If we like what they have to say and they like us, then we potentially would add them to our interview pool for later on for those applications. Earlier, there was the note about the hourly reading interventionist, and that was in my last board report. Served one of our parochial schools, and we found a terrific candidate for that. And then also just a note on our state and local assessments. So as I believe a number of the administrators mentioned, we finished our winter benchmark assessment window, and we aggregated that data together, and I'll share some of that with the curriculum committee, as I did in the fall, at an upcoming meeting. And then also a note went out to guardians, informing them about our ongoing efforts to get ready for state assessments that will have to happen here locally.
Thank you. Okay.
Just two main things. One is we are going to be renting the Lodi Pride trailer this year. So we've opened up the website already, and you can make reservations there. There are a couple of changes that we were doing. One is we're taking all the food equipment out of the trailers so that will not have to be an issue with cleaning. The second is that we will be thoroughly cleaning in between each use, so that means we'll have to space out uses a little bit. We won't be able to do back-to-back rentals, and there will unfortunately need to be a cleaning fee this year, which we haven't set yet unless Brent set it today, which I don't think he did, or worked with us to set. But we'll have that on the website as soon as it's available. But you can reserve it now, and we'll see how it goes. And then the second one is we have also decided that we will be doing National Night Out in person this year. It's the second Tuesday in August, so we are going to start our plans for that as well. And there will probably be some changes there due to COVID, depending on what the world looks like then. But we're excited to be kind of starting to coordinate some of our full-time events.
Thank you. Tiffany, Student Services.
Yeah, I just want to echo a couple of things that other people have said when Joe was talking about the nice part about having virtual conferences. We're finding the same thing with holding IEP meetings and 504 meetings with families and parents. They don't have to find childcare. They don't have to drive in if the weather's not great. And so I think that's something we'll continue to do going forward, just because it's a lot more convenient for families. So that has been kind of the silver lining. And then several other principals mentioned Black History Month, kindness, be the change. Our student services staff is putting together a scope and sequence for all of those different topics so that we have a similar focus across the district next year on those individual weeks or months, so that we kind of have a better repository of resources for those special days and then for themed weeks as well.
Administrative report.
Yeah, I only have a couple things to add. I think I've talked enough during this meeting. First of all, just again congratulating our co-winners, Nick Prozik, Garrett Kurtzborn, and Kayla Spursbeck, the 5th grade teacher, also won the poll this year as an educator. And so just proud of all of them and represent us very well. So excellent teachers and excellent students. So thrilled for all of them for the well-deserved recognition. Joe had mentioned the 10th anniversary of the high distance ed, and as I said that night, it was a far cry from when we signed the initial agreement, when we sat in a back room in the library and did it over Skype. And now it's just this really big thing, and it's just been so impressive to see that grow throughout the years, and just the relationships people have. You wouldn't think that would be possible across the world that way, and it's just truly a gem for our district and something we need to continue looking forward. So just so thrilled and proud of all, Mark Cole, all the work he's done, Mr. Chad, JP, Joel, and everybody else, Joel mentioned. So, and finally, I'm just thrilled to be able to thank SSM Health for hosting a vaccine clinic tomorrow for all of our educators, including food service, bus drivers, everybody. So thankful for them that they're hosting that. Thankful for Baraboo School District for hosting it. So we're not big enough on our own to have our own vaccine clinic, so we're combining with Baraboo and Wisconsin Dells. So just appreciated the planning between those three school districts to make this a reality for our staff. Really appreciate all the work Maureen Palmer has put in with vaccinations. Not just this, if you'd asked us a week and a half ago, SSM Health probably would have been who we thought was probably the third option we'd get to, right? And then they jumped, which was awesome. But we've done a lot of work. Mo's been a lot of emails with staff and with other organizations trying to get our staff vaccinated. So that's been awesome. And then a very large shout out to Jean Winters, Rodney Burrow, our two school nurses who will be doing vaccinations tomorrow, and Lexum Weber, who is an EMT and also will be doing vaccinations tomorrow as part of that clinic. So we really appreciate their willingness to do that. So, and then the second vaccine clinic, and I appreciate all of our staff, their flexibility in making it a virtual day tomorrow, and our parents' flexibility. I know this is one additional thing, but as an email said to me, they were thrilled, and I just keep telling people, hopefully this is a big step back towards being normal around here a little bit more, like these other steps we take. So that's all I have.
So my report is almost the same as yours, and the 10-year anniversary, it was amazing to be in that room, and people are halfway around the world and interact. It was today, it was 2021, it was really weird. But then I can also say that I know whenever we go anywhere and we talk to other people, and they're like, you're from Lodi, what's unique about Lodi? The very first thing we always say is that program. And then people are like, oh my God, you have people teaching over, and they're teaching, how can that even happen, right? They can't even fathom that, and we get to have that as a gem in our district. It's just phenomenal. And then I'd have to echo what Joe said and congratulating Nick, and of course you would get this thing, and I can't wait to see what you do with that money in college and after college, and what you become and grow into. It's just gonna be an amazing person, I just can't wait. Right? Sorry to lay it on, but it's gonna be that, it is.
Yeah, no pressure now.
Let us know how it's going.
It is. And then Derek Pertzborn, I mean, we already know how an excellent teacher, and not just with math, but with students and everything else he does, and coaching and all that stuff. He's just dedicated to our district. And now Kayla, the number of educators who get this award in our district is going up and up and up, and it's just great for our district. It's just amazing, right?
Another thing for our district is the exchange students that we have.
Yes, definitely.
The people don't always realize that. I'm still in touch with Yo and Shakri Pepashetchian, and a lot of them from all across the world. You can still be in touch with them, and it's just awesome to have that many exchanges with that many people from a small town like this.
Thailand, Germany, Costa Rica, right?
Nova Scotia? No.
Yes. And then we also have sometimes other exchange students, individual for the year. So we have those three exchanges, and then we'll also have other exchange students that come from different countries.
Which is amazing for our students to experience those other cultures.
Absolutely.
God, this is a great district.
And Kati Ano-Alina Laukkanen was my exchange student, and she came back for Nicole's wedding. So that was really cool. So, I mean, just perpetuates, so.
The one thing that I would echo with the 10th year anniversary that I think Joe mentioned is it really shines a light on that this pandemic is worldwide, right? When you're sitting in a conference and they're all masked and we're all masked and they're temperature checking at the door, and so it just reminds you it's not a figment of our imagination. It's everywhere, right? So
it is amazing, though. Thank you all. Reports from our different committees. CISA 5.
Well, I was at that meeting just the other day. It's the second meeting we had in person, and it's still weird. I mean, I've only been on there a year, and I don't think I'm very effective because I don't even know who anybody is. You know, it's really.
But it's also been a COVID year too.
It was just a weird year for me to go on to take the CISA 5 rep. And the people there are great. And Jeremy Beal is, I gave him very high marking because he always gets back to you. And I can't believe the amount of people and teachers and things that they do at CISA 5. If they need a teacher to work with somebody who is deaf or other handicaps, they've got it. They're all over the place. So we can be really proud to be a member of CISA 5.
So just to piggyback off that a little bit, CISA, is Shelley going off the board?
Yeah,
We
she
will need
is.
another CISA 5 rep, right? So we are in the first year of a 3-year term at CISA 5, so Jeremy had reached out to me just saying, you know, somebody's gonna need to take this on. Meetings are typically the first Tuesday of the month, right? No meetings in July and December. August and January typically are dinner meetings, except May, which is the second Thursday, which is an annual meeting, reorganization meeting. So it's kind of 3 meetings in one, but they're still only about 90 minutes long at most, so.
Yeah, they're easy meetings to go to. Everything is all laid out. I couldn't get on their system, not shocking anybody. But they always help me when I'm lost in the computer world. And they're just great to work with, so.
It'll be something to think about as we reorganize.
Yes, in April.
In April.
Yeah.
We will bring that back up.
I'm surprised that we haven't termed out. I thought it was 2 or 3-year terms, and I was on for 7 years. And then Angie, and then Shelley, so I'm surprised we haven't termed, maybe they like us up there, I don't know.
Well, I asked to take a second one on because I usually had 2 committee meetings, and then I only had 1 committee meeting, and I felt I was a slacker. So that's why I asked to do the CISA 5, because I felt I wasn't doing as much work as I should be, just because of the way the meetings were situated. So that's why I took it on for 1 year, but it would be much more fun to have more knowledge if you, and of course, this is a year we had no faces, so, you know.
Yeah, I enjoyed it when I was on. I wouldn't mind doing it again, but, you know, whatever.
End of April. Okay, co-curricular.
Additional falls to spring sports start in the coming weeks. Here we go, Lodi's a trendsetter again. The football team begins practice on Monday, March 8th, with their first game coming at home on Friday, March 26th versus Edgerton. Soccer will start practice on March 22nd with their first game scheduled at home Thursday, April 8th versus Wisconsin Heights. Forensics is in the middle of its season. The team placed first in the small teams at Milton Friday Night Lights tournament. At the sub-district tournament, the entire team earned scores that will allow them to move on to the next level at the district tournament.
Okay, thank you. OSC?
We're in the final week of the enrollment period for OSC, because we started it this year, so it ends on Monday. So before the meeting 2 weeks ago, the board meeting 2 weeks ago, they organized like a virtual meeting with the advisors, since we can't do anything in person and we don't have project night. So 12 families participated. I watched some of it. It was pretty good and pretty interesting. They did a whole presentation and then opened it up for questions from everybody.
Wow.
Neat.
That's really good to do that at a younger level, because they have to do it at upper level. And so, nice.
Yeah, and then Jill Rosler has officially left the governance board. She was planning to transition out this year, so that was her last meeting.
So you need people then?
We always are looking for people.
No to anyone out there who wants to be on the OSC board. Board committee reports, contract review.
Yes, we met and we talked about a few things. One of the things we talked about was we had, at the last board meeting, had talked about a staff member
potentially reimbursing credits for the business manager position. And we talked about that a lot. Some in the context of just like, what was that proposal about? It's so that we have a good business manager when retires. But also then it opened a broader discussion of what opportunities are there for staff to get further education, to get credits. You know, it's kind of a system, different systems in the past where they had to get credits. So I think it was a kind of a lengthy and good discussion about what policies might we put in place, or just a way of thinking about opportunities for all staff to become better educators, better staff members, and have opportunities as well. So the way we left it with that particular question is that Brent and Vince were gonna kind of just have more discussion about what that could look like, what cost sharing potentially, what like agreement as far as length of employment afterwards, if that was something that went forward. So that wasn't really a decision, but that was a discussion that was open. I thought that was good. Insurance renewal, hopefully getting a contract for a few years, locking in some prices. Did talk about the food service company transitioning to employees that are, with the new food service coming in, some of the employees, our food service employees would be their employees, and that transition seems like it's going well. I think that was pretty much it.
Okay, curriculum?
We met on February 17th. We had department updates from the World Language Department, Career and Technical, CTE, and let's see, Greenhouse, the LMC, so library. We did talk also briefly about the middle school math program, and the literacy at the elementary school, or I mean, primary school, I believe. Primary.
Okay, thank you. Any more from facility finance, or do we cover?
Oh, no, there's a whole lot more.
Okay.
Let's see, where do we begin? So we had a discussion about the city pool. The city has approached us to talk about if we would participate in the management of that pool, and I think we're going to investigate that a little bit further, but we have a lot of questions. More questions than answers, really, at this point in time.
That was a topic many years ago.
Yep,
it's
came back around.
It's coming back.
We did talk about the parking lots that we don't do. We also talked about the fact that we have already received some funds from the ESSER 1 and 2, or from 1. We haven't received the 2 funds yet. This is the CARES, used to be called CARES. And that there hopefully will be, there will be more money coming from the 3rd. We just have no idea what that's going to be yet. The cautionary tale there is that we're spending a lot of money. So although it looks like we're getting a big influx, it's actually gone out already, or is it going out, and this will be some reimbursements for that. We did get some good news on health insurance. Brent, do you want to, not to put you on the spot, but just real quick, I don't remember the numbers, but.
Yeah, so we asked for a 3-year renewal, and we did get a 3-year response back, a 2.5% for next year, a 3.5 and a 5.5. And so our usage was down from like a 1.07 or 107% down to 79%. So that is great news for Lodi staff, because it sets us up nicely for the next couple of years in terms of very good renewals for our staff.
Thanks. And we had some discussions about LCAT and what happens with LCAT after the grant runs out, and possibly having the school district carry that on, so there'll be more discussions about that. We looked at our Baird model, which, it's a lot of digits in there, and there'll be more to come on that. And really, I think that's the big story, is that there's so much up in the air right now with budgets. The state hasn't figured out what they're going to do yet. There's more of these ESSER funds. And so we're kind of waiting for a lot of pieces to fall together. And that's affecting things like as a board, we're gonna have to decide on compensation for next year, but we need a few more pieces to be in place before we can come with any recommendations for that. Same with a lot of the big budget items. So we're kind of in a waiting game right now. And but Brent and his team are doing a good job of kind of putting the dollars in that we know at the moment so that we're ready to go as soon as we get that. But we're probably gonna be pushing it this year based on what we know as far as timeline. So, yeah.
When that money comes in that we've already spent.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna need a new treasurer on the board.
Yep.
End of April. Any board members are thinking of that?
Bill said he was all ready for it.
Julie, how are you doing? Barb?
End of April you got to think about that one.
I got them all awake now. What do you want me to do with them?
You forgot Angie.
He knows.
Yeah, I know where Angie is.
Future meetings, yes, we'll have those, and future agenda items, get them to Maureen or to Vince. We are ready for,
So I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
motion by Stephen and a second by Shelley. Get my S's on there.
There's just one last thing. I sincerely appreciate how difficult our discussion was again tonight, and I am happy with what we came up with.
Good. Any other further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned, 7-0. No one can oppose that.